Chapter 1238. After receiving the order, the newspaper reader raised the newspaper and read, Article 5. Formulate specific regulations for national sports competitions and professionalized sports participants. After reading this article, he stopped and waited out of habit. This time, not only were the officials confused, but Li Longji was even more puzzled. Everyone knew that the most typical sports competition was football. Currently, every state had its own football team that represented the local government. There were two best stadiums, one in the capital and the other in Luzhou. Every state had their own stadiums. The wealthier places had better stadiums, while the poorer places only had stadiums for appearances. Some did not even have a lawn. Apart from the government, there were also private companies that were interested in forming their own football teams. There were even people who liked to play football, who formed their own teams and played with others. Naturally, football was not the only sport competition. There were many other sports such as badminton, billiards, track and field, swimming, and so on. What puzzled the people in Hanyuan Hall was why it was included in the government's decree when it was usually done for fun. Would it affect the country if it was done well or not? Hence, those who were confused looked at Zhang Zhong, hoping to get some information from him. Zhang Zhong was also confused. He looked at the other person and gave him a I don't know expression. I'll ask Xiaobao later. Read it. Li Longji gave up on the idea of figuring it out for now. Article 6. Lift the restrictions on the purchase of lottery tickets, further crack down on private gambling houses, and increase the number of sports lottery tickets, the newspaper reader read out. Everyone understood the meaning of this article. In the past, buying lottery tickets depended on other people's wealth and income. The original plan was to control gambling, but Xiao Bao and Cuckoo realized that they could not control it. Since there were too many private gambling houses, since they could not control it, they might as well reduce it. Instead of letting the local people earn the money, it would be better for the court to take it. At least, it could be used for public welfare. The pursuit of profit was difficult to eliminate since ancient times. After a while, they thought that Article 5 might serve the purpose of Article 6. There must be rules to increase the number of lottery tickets. Otherwise, how would they sell the tickets if they stopped after 2 rounds? Li Longji gestured to the newspaper reader. The newspaper reader continued reading. Article 7. Encourage craftsmen to create their own skills. Improve the technology protection law. Strictly unify weights and measures, and reformulate the craftsman's skills assessment standards. Article 8. Increase food quarantine standards and gradually improve the implementation of food classification. Article 9. Implement the minimum income protection plan for migrant workers. There will be no upper limit on migrant workers' income. Formulate a standard for migrant workers' one-day working hours. Overtime will be double the wage. Increase the cycle of migrant workers' work and rest standards. A week of 7 days, with 1 day off in each cycle. The 10th rule. Wait, this subject has something to say. Yuan Rong stopped the newspaper reader. He turned his head and asked the emperor, Your Majesty, this subject doesn't understand. The officials have a rest. If the workers also rest, it's like building. If they rest, will the construction stop? Or when the ship is unloading goods at the dock, will it stop when it's time to rest? Should we stop? Li Longji wasn't sure either. It was mainly because it was too sudden, and he didn't have much time to react. After pondering for a while, he said, You can take turns to rest. Or you can also work overtime like you do on a single day. As for why it's 7 days a week, and not 10 days a week, I guess it's based on the Sunday of a certain place. Li Longji seemed to be quite knowledgeable. He knew about the Sunday. If he took a day off every 10 days, perhaps Xiao Bao and Cuckoo would think that it was too long. Yuan Rong nodded and asked again. If everyone takes a day off, won't it indirectly reduce the Tang people's work time, and thus reduce the production? What is the classification of the migrant workers? Do the farmers also need to rest? There will be a supplementary explanation. It should be sent here before noon today. Zhang Zhong stood up and explained. Even now, he still didn't understand why his son and daughter-in-law didn't send the detailed explanation first. Instead, they made the others wait. That's fine. Yuan Rong didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he said, I've thought about the ninth rule a bit. It means to protect the people who work for them. They're worried that the employers will exploit them. But this way, the employers will be very selective when choosing people to work for them. Only in this way can they guarantee greater benefits. So many people with professional skills, when faced with this situation, won't they lose the opportunity to find a job? While protecting a portion of the people, they are actually harming a portion of the people. How does this work? The officials all frowned. If it was in the past, perhaps some people would think that this matter didn't concern them. But now they couldn't. The imperial court needed efficiency, and it also needed a civil servant to have a sense of responsibility. If they dared to be perfunctory when it came to official matters, they would definitely be taken down. As development sped up, there were more and more things to do, and the connections with the local authorities were also closer. Every day, every department sent out telegrams non-stop. There were always some matters that needed to be resolved. It was impossible to return to the leisurely days of the past. There were already many officials who couldn't ask for leave to go out with their families. Li Longji was very satisfied with the attitude of the officials in the imperial court. But he also couldn't think of a way to resolve the problems and contradictions that Xiao Bao and Cuckoo had come up with. Just as everyone was actively thinking, the person reading the newspaper gathered his courage and said, There is a 10th rule. There is? The 10th rule? Read it. Yuan Rong said, overstepping his authority. Li Longji didn't have the heart to care about such a small matter, so he nodded. The 10th rule is that the local authorities will increase the expenditure on vocational skills training. In the past, the local authorities would passively accept the training of people looking for jobs, but they would actively require people to participate in the training. For example, the people who work at the docks will need to undergo basic training on the use of docks tools, so that they can understand the use of the tools and properly allocate their strength. The person reading the newspaper read out. That's more like it. At least there's a supplement to the previous rule. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo saw that the national treasury had too much money, so they helped to spend it. Li Longji said with a smile. The others nodded in agreement. Indeed, the national treasury's money was placed there and couldn't be spent immediately. The income of the past 2 years had increased too quickly, and it had broken the previous mindset of spending money. Moreover, the local officials didn't blindly ask for money to be spent for corruption, so the money could be used reasonably. However, new spending projects hadn't been found yet. It couldn't be said that the money couldn't be spent carelessly. The simplest way to spend money was to repair roads and river embankments. If they were to spread out throughout the country, the national treasury wouldn't have enough money. It might seem like a lot, but if one wanted to build roads, bridges, and river embankments at the same time, even if they threw in a fifth of the money, they wouldn't be able to build them. However, the problem was that there were other policies supporting the construction of roads. It was that the merchants would build them and then charge for them. The merchants were very active, and some logistics companies even worked with others to build roads. They needed to quickly ship out their goods, and after some calculations, as long as the fees collected from the roads and bridges exceeded the interest of the Great Tang Bank and the depreciation of the currency, it would be a very good profit. For the time being, it seemed that the recovery period was just a little longer. There were some that took 5 years, some that took 7 years, and some that took 10 years. As for those that took more than 10 years, because the roads weren't built that well and had to withstand the pressure of hundreds of tons of carts, those that took 10 years were already very good. The far-sighted merchants liked to build roads and bridges. They could see how fast the Great Tang was developing, and the more advanced and practical the technology was, the more the people would earn, and the more goods there would be, so they needed more circulation. Currently, they were calculating the recovery period based on the circulation of goods, but they believed that it wouldn't be long before the actual income would be several times, or even more than 10 times the current calculation. At that time, they would have to sign a supplementary agreement with the imperial court to redistribute the sudden increase in profits. Back then, when they signed the contract, it was agreed upon. As such, The officials of the imperial court couldn't directly spend money to build roads. If they wanted to build a road, after they had just gotten someone to measure it, and before the money was allocated, a merchant came to ask for it, would they give it to him or not? Now, all the officials knew that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan intended to spend the money on the training of Great Tang's workers. This official thinks that this money should be spent. Wang Bei, who was in charge of the money, stepped forward and said to the crowd. Many people were surprised. Wang Bei, weren't you always at odds with Zhang Xiaobao and the Wang clan? Why are you speaking up for them? Could it be that you have reached an agreement with Zhang Zhong just now? But how much can you give away? How much do you get? Is it worth it? Wang Bei didn't care about the different gazes of others. As an official of Great Tang, this official sincerely supports this spending. At first glance, after the money is invested, it won't be recovered in a short period of time. However, when the country does things, it can't always look at the short term. Just like Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's Chaoyang operation, now that the merchants are providing the money, our country's national treasury can support it even without the merchants. It's just to let the merchants remember the basic moral requirements of being a person at all times. I believe that everyone has seen it now. 10 years, 10 years. How are the lives of the people of our country? How many of them are educated? It's not like in the past where it was difficult to understand government decrees. As long as the government posted the notice, the people would be able to understand it. Knowing the affairs of the country and discussing them, knowing the law and abiding by the law, learning the material and applying it, understanding the principles and taking the right path. This is the power of education. The little sapling that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan planted many years ago has finally grown. I believe that in another 10 years, in another 20 years, the talents cultivated by our country's education alone will be enough to easily suppress the other countries and make them unable to raise their heads. This is the cultivation of children, but now it's the cultivation of adults. It's the cultivation of people who missed the education period 10 years ago. 10 years later, everyone think about it. When all the craftsmen have their own skills, what will our Great Tang be like then? After Wang Bei said this, those who previously had other dirty thoughts began to admire him. At this moment his back was straightest. He put aside his personal grudges and spoke from the perspective of righteousness. Even if he was an enemy, he would gladly do it. Then, the officials began to consider according to Wang Bei's ideas. This was especially so for those officials who had seen outsiders. They deeply felt the envy and yearning of the people of other countries for Great Tang's education, as well as the fear and desire for Great Tang's technology. Li Longji sighed in relief and nodded. Good. I also feel like I'm in a dream recently. I almost can't believe that this is what our Great Tang is like. Come bring me the newspaper. I'll read a few articles. Chapter 1239. Article 11. All fees for small-scale individual businesses will be waived, but they will not be allowed to move around and sell their goods. Those who are farmers and become individual businesses will not be listed as merchants. Those who are merchants can pay a fee to change jobs at any time. The same goes for craftsmen. Li Longji read out the words from the newspaper, then raised his head to look at the others, waiting for them to discuss. Your Majesty, isn't this a mess? Zhang Jiuling said with a bitter expression. Merchants were lowly, and were 2 levels lower than farmers. Although merchants had a high status in many situations, at least others had a psychological advantage when compared to merchants. Zhang Zhong's subordinate, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Works, Wei Shu, glanced at his leader and had no choice but to stand up and say, I also think so. In the past, farmers and workers tried not to do business because of the issue of origin. Now that they can change jobs as they wish, isn't this encouraging everyone to do business instead of production? What do you say, official Zhang? Li Longji asked Zhang Zhong. Zhang Zhong had been focusing most of his energy on the Research Institute of the Ministry of Works, and had not spent much time studying economics. Hearing the emperor ask, he shook his head and said, I don't know. Ha, you're not as good as me, Li Longji teased. As soon as these words came out, the others were speechless at Zhang Zhong. His Majesty did not always say I am private, But this was a court meeting. Wasn't it too frivolous to talk to Zhang Zhong? Yes, I'm not as good as you. Zhang Zhong's personality was a bit straightforward, especially when it came to the etiquette of a ruler. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone over to Zhang Xiaobao and called his son Zhang Jidushi during the imperial examinations and reprimanded Zhang Xiaobao for not knowing the rules in court. Because of this, the officials could not find fault with him in this aspect. The consequences of doing anything to him were very serious. It was obvious that they were bullying an honest person. Just look at Wang Bei and the others. Li Longji helplessly shook his head when he saw Zhang Zhong's solemn expression. He couldn't understand why Zhang Zhong couldn't be more tactful. Why couldn't Zhang Zhong be more tactful? Why couldn't he make small talk or flatter him? That would make him seem more amiable. If she insisted on being stubborn, how many people would have attacked her if she didn't have her son and daughter-in-law behind her? But this was fine as well. If others were attacking him, he could use him without worry. This was the sort of person who, when asked if he had betrayed the great Tang with a blade by his neck, would do his best to turn his head, pledging his loyalty to the country with his life. All right, since you don't know, I'll ask your son's adoptive father to tell you. Li Longji looked at Gao Lishir. Gao Lishir was a eunuch. Normally, he was not supposed to speak during court meetings, but speaking in private was very useful. Now that his name was called, he had no choice but to stand up. Gao Lishir smiled at Zhang Zhong. Zhang Zhong hesitated for a moment before returning a smile. He really wanted to stop Gao Lishir, but after thinking about it, he realized that this was not the first time Gao Lishir had spoken. Moreover, Gao Lishir was able to reason with him. If he stopped Gao Lishir, he would be jealous of him. Since His Majesty has asked me to say it, I will show my incompetence. Everyone just treat it as a joke. If there is anything wrong with it, please laugh it off. Gao Lishir said humbly. None of the officials dared to treat him as a joke. Treating him as a joke would be a real joke. It is said that agriculture, industry, and commerce are interchangeable, and that one's birthplace will be confused. In truth, the birthplace of agriculture, industry, and commerce exist only in name. Farmers also buy and sell things, such as the excess food in their homes or the poultry they raise. Craftsmen naturally have to sell the things that they make. Merchants also buy land to grow crops and research tools to create and process goods. As I said before, let the farmers gather together and use the 100 households as the foundation. However, there is no need to collect rent and instead use money as a substitute. Isn't that the same as being a merchant? Why is there a need to make such a clear distinction? Interchangeability may seem chaotic, but it is actually a process for the common people to adjust themselves. Those who believe that they can do something well can do it without worrying about the influence of their birthplace. I trust that everyone knows how fast our great Tang is developing. There are many talented people in every industry, and the purpose of birthplace is no longer to divide people into different classes. Instead, it is to make statistics and management more convenient. In the past, it was said that merchants were inferior to farmers because they did not produce anything and only transported goods. Now, everyone knows that merchants do not only buy and sell, they can also promote the development of other industries. For example, if merchants say that chickens are worth money, everyone will work hard to raise chickens. If merchants say that handicrafts are worth money, craftsmen will produce more. Merchants can even transport goods from overseas. A qualified merchant is very useful. Let's talk about the people on the top list of billionaires. Speaking of this, everyone seems to find it funny. Its appearance was caused by a children's game for Monopoly. Now it has become a symbol of whether a merchant is successful or not. At the same time, it is also a test for merchants to learn the economic rules. Then everyone knows the rules. Not only do you have to be rich enough, you also have to pass the test. Otherwise, even if you buy a lottery ticket and win a few million strings of coins, you won't be able to enter the list. Of course, a person with a few million strings of coins won't be able to enter the list. When Gao Lishir said this, many people laughed. Some people found it amusing, while others laughed nostalgically, thinking of the past. Back then, who would have thought that a game would have such a far-reaching influence? Who would have thought that a game could earn so much money? Who would have thought that the person who designed the game would do everything for money, but no longer care about money when he had money? That was a legend. That was a legend. Time seemed to have gone on for a long time, but it also seemed to have always been in front of them. Monopoly had always been popular, but the person who designed it no longer played games. That period of time could not be sealed away. There was no need to recall it, because it would never be forgotten. Therefore, everyone began to reminisce about the time and place of a court meeting. Li Longji narrowed his eyes and experienced the happy process of reminiscing. He said, all right. Let's get down to business. Let's talk about the origin, status, and contribution of merchants. Everyone snapped back to their senses and smiled at each other, as though they were not the ones reminiscing. Gao Lisher thought about what he wanted to say and continued. Any merchant who can enter the list has contributed a lot to the country. They will take the initiative to communicate with places that provide goods when there is a need. For example, there is a merchant who goes to Wanyan County and says that he wants to buy a large number of poultry in half a year. The price is relatively high, about 100,000 birds. The county magistrate of Wanyan County is an ordinary county magistrate, not from Jianjia. Because the difference is very big, an ordinary county magistrate will immediately tell the people when he hears it, and the people will increase the scale of breeding. For merchants who can't enter the list, he will wait for Wanyan County to breed them. However, for merchants on the list, he will send people to investigate. After finding that there are too many, he will tell the people that you can't breed them like this. Otherwise, when he collects enough, you won't be able to increase the price and will lose money. At that time, he will think of a way to adjust, discuss with the people, discuss with the government, and help the local farmers to distribute and scale. Otherwise, he will be severely punished. Of course, if the county magistrate is someone from Jianjia Academy, he will adjust immediately without the need for merchants to adjust. I'm just saying, people from Jianjia won't passively wait for merchants to come to them. For example, the county magistrate of Wanyan County has already finished planning and took the initiative to negotiate with merchants. He is only waiting for the contract to be fulfilled. After saying a bunch of words, Gao Lisher didn't say anything else. He had already expressed what he wanted to express. Zhang Jiling reacted quickly and said, "Thank you, General Gao. I didn't think it through just now, but now I've thought it through. Indeed, we can't look at merchants like we did in the past. They all have a sense of responsibility, and the stability of Tang is indispensable to their contributions. Besides, Xiaobao has always been suppressing the status of merchants, but suppressing doesn't mean belittling them. Xiaobao just doesn't want merchants to have a higher status than others. We shouldn't discriminate against merchants." Then I'll continue reading, the last one. Li Longji didn't expect that everyone's views of merchants were so different. However, there were merchants in every official's family. Otherwise, where would they get money? Their previous salaries weren't enough for them to eat, drink, and play. They just didn't want the status of merchants to increase and be out of their control. Otherwise, why did they have to use the method of exchanging benefits when raising taxes? The biggest resistance behind the scenes came from them. Li Longji understood everything, but he couldn't directly kill them. If he killed them all, who would help him govern the country? Moreover, if he killed a bunch of them, the new ones wouldn't be clean either. Article 12. The local government will set up a county-style carriage company. 90% of the Great Tang's army will be eliminated and used for transportation. At the same time, the postal department will be integrated, and a uniform stamp will be issued. A uniform fee will be set for the weight and distance of mail. After reading the last article, Li Longji put down the newspaper and picked up his teacup. However, he didn't drink from it. Instead, he used the lid of the teacup to sweep the water. The civil and military officials on both sides once again entered a state of contemplation. Some simply returned to the small table at the back and sat down to drink tea. There were chairs and tables behind them, but there was only tea on them and no snacks. They could sit there from the start of the court session. The main reason was that the people at the front didn't sit, and the people at the back wouldn't be able to see the emperor if they sat. Moreover, they didn't have such treatment in the past, so they weren't used to it. The discussion today took too long, and some couldn't stand, and had to sit down to rest. After a while, everyone sat down as if they were having a tea party. Only the chamberlains of Jin still had to stand there with their sabers. When Li Longji saw the situation below, he was amused. Usually, when the court session was held in Xingqing Palace, everyone would sit. However, when it came to the morning court session, everyone would stand. Later, he discovered a problem. If they stood for too long, once the court session ended, the officials wouldn't immediately return to work. Instead, they would rest, which would affect their efficiency. Therefore, during the winter, not only did they have to install heaters, but they also had to provide chairs for everyone. After drinking a few mouthfuls of tea and waiting for someone to refill it, Li Longji looked at the people sitting and said, "Everyone speak. Your Majesty, the tea is good." Jiangxin, the person in charge of the agriculture temple who was being stared at by the emperor, had no choice but to speak. Have you eaten breakfast? You're drinking black pu'er tea." Li Longji nodded and continued to stare at Jiangxi, and seeing that he couldn't avoid it, Jiangxin rubbed his stomach and replied, "I haven't eaten. No wonder I'm hungry." This official was thinking that since many of the military horses have been eliminated, could they be used for farming? We can use oxen in dry fields and paddy fields. Where's Xiaoqing? Li Longji looked at the Minister of War Xiaosong. Xiaosong also didn't eat breakfast. There was only tea on the coffee table, but he brought his own food. He didn't bring any buns. There was stuffing, but he was afraid that the smell would spread too far. He brought hot and dry biscuits. Each biscuit was only a quarter of the size of a palm. There were pickles in the biscuits. When he ate one biscuit at a time, there was no smell, so he wasn't afraid of choking. At this moment, he took the time to eat 2 biscuits. Before he could swallow them, he was called. It must be said that martial artists were also quick-witted. While chewing, Xiaosong quickly picked up the cup of tea and gulped it down. Then he sighed and said to the emperor, "Your Majesty, this is indeed a famous pu'er tea. It's very tasty." Li Longji smiled and nodded. "I still have hibiscus cakes. Xiaoqing, do you want to try some?" "No need, this official isn't hungry." Speaking of the military horses, this official is only worried about one thing. After the military horses are eliminated, will the remaining ones be enough for war? Although there are guns and cannons now, and there's no need for soldiers to ride on horses and charge with swords, transport still needs to be used, right? Cannonballs and bullets, as well as food and medicine. Xiaosong rubbed his chest as he spoke. Just now he had swallowed too much and choked. However, he wasn't afraid that the emperor would see him eat. It was normal to eat in the morning court, but if he was caught, he would be embarrassed. It would appear that he had no ability to steal food. "Is there anything else?" Li Longji asked. "No." Xiaosong put down his hand that was rubbing his stomach. He felt much better. "Then you don't have to worry about this. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo have already discovered that the cannibals have gathered no less than 30,000 cavalrymen at the border of the 2 countries. They said that the Arabian horses are more useful, and they want to take them by surprise." Li Longji explained. Xiaosong raised his hand and scratched his head. This official knows about the border. 30,000 cavalrymen is very difficult to take down, right? If you fire the cannons, the cavalrymen will scatter. If you use the guns, when the enemy charges, you must kill the horses in front. Then, the horses at the back will trip or take a detour. When you take them down, there won't be many left. That's their problem. If they can't take them down, they'll think of other ways. In any case, they said that it's enough to leave 10% of the military horses. Li Longji also didn't know how to take other people's horses. I don't understand. Xiaosong shook his head and didn't say anything else. Li Longji didn't care what Xiaosong was thinking. His gaze continued to sweep across the officials below. This time there was no need for him to name names. Yuan Qianyao, who was very close to him, put down his teacup and asked. In the beginning, there was only military mail and no civilian mail. Later Xiao Bao and the others set up one. Then, there were private companies in other places. Relatively speaking, it's still considered standard. However, the mailing locations can't cover the entire country. Will the newly established mailing department steal their business? This official has the same question, Yu Wenrong echoed. Xiaobao's intention might be to steal their business. After all, their coverage is small, and their information system isn't as complete as the imperial court's. Xiaobao didn't let his own intelligence department participate. Li Longji didn't understand what was going on, so he wanted someone to help him analyze it. At this moment, Zhang Zhong was annoyed. He still had things to do in the Ministry of Works, so he said, "This official will immediately get Xiaobao and the others to send a detailed explanation. We'll look at it when the time comes and discuss it. In the end, we still have to do according to what's written in the newspaper. Why bother?" Only Gao Lisher understood what was going on. As long as Her Majesty encountered something that Xiaobao was involved in, she would definitely consider it carefully and think of a way to scheme against Xiaobao. It was a habit that had been formed over many years. It wasn't easy to change it in a short period of time, and perhaps it would never change. The officials nodded. They were also vexed. Seeing that no one was helping him, Li Longji sighed gloomily. "Court is adjourned. I'll get the Imperial Kitchen to send each of you a boxed meal with 2 meat and 2 vegetables, so that you won't feel uncomfortable secretly eating below. If it really doesn't work out, set aside a quarter of an hour during morning court to eat in the hall. Those who came early can come in to eat. I really don't need to worry about any danger if the palace doors are opened early. It's now the era of firearms. As long as you don't bring explosives or guns in, it's fine. In the future, make sure to reserve diesel locomotives. Even if you're late, you won't be considered late. Disperse, disperse." Waving his hand, Li Longji didn't leave. He sat there and looked at the sky. No one knew what he was thinking. The civil and military officials were now used to the situation, where etiquette was getting worse and worse. Her Majesty was beginning to be pragmatic. She saved time on etiquette, and could do other things, even if it was just listening to music or reading stories in the newspaper. Therefore, the officials didn't want to waste time. They drank all the tea in their teacups and got up to leave. Those who brought food couldn't eat it. When they went back, they would eat boxed meals. At noon, there would be people from Savant's restaurant or Success House who would send them food. Life was getting better and better. This bunch of people, I really don't know what to say about them. Li Longji shook his head and complained. He then instructed Gao Lisher, "Go to the pear garden and choose a few crosstalk and skits. I'll be happy. Tell me, what kind of reaction do you think the 12 national policies will have?" Gao Lisher turned his head and glanced at eunuch Luobin. Luobin was very perceptive and ran to the pear garden to make the arrangements. Turning his head, Gao Lisher reached out to help Li Longji and said, "I think it will be very chaotic. After a day and a half of chaos, Xiaobao and Cuckoo will take the opportunity to take action and resolve the unstable situation. If it were me who saw the newspaper, I would definitely be confused. I've been confused for a long time. The officials haven't even discussed the specific consequences, let alone the common people. Chaos, chaos, chaos. After a while, there will be stability for a few years." Li Longji waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need anyone to help him. He walked to a corner, grabbed a bicycle, and rode it toward the pear garden. Now, he didn't sit in a sedan anymore. It was slow and not as comfortable as riding a bicycle. Gao Lisher also quickly took a bicycle from someone and rode it. With a wave of his hand, the large bicycle team left Hanyuan Palace Hall. There were also people with guns running behind them. The hot air balloons above were signaling to each other, doing their job as guards. It could be said that Li Longji wasn't afraid. The palace and the main streets were illuminated by large light bulbs. The hot air balloons in the sky were on alert. There were also many hidden sentries who could come in and assassinate him. When reading the newspapers in the morning court, the major prefectures had already begun to post the newspapers. There were also people who delivered the newspapers to the various counties. Those who were too far away could only see the newspapers at night. As for the villages that were further away, they had to be weekly or monthly. In any case, there wouldn't be anyone who would go out of their way to deliver the newspapers every day. The commoners who didn't subscribe to the newspapers at home all gathered at the bulletin board. Those who subscribed to the newspapers also gathered in front of the bulletin board. In fact, there were many people who subscribed to the newspapers in the prefectures. This was because in the end they didn't lose money at all. Moreover, by cutting out the parts where there were discounts from the merchants, they had an overall advantage. The first few pages of the newspapers were content, while the back pages were filled with advertisements. The merchants who placed the advertisements would bear the cost of the subscriptions. Furthermore, it wasn't that wool came from the sheep's back. The price of similar products was the same. If they placed the advertisements in large quantities, they would earn this portion of the money. If the quantity was large to a certain extent, the price could be lowered when the goods were purchased. This would cause the merchants who didn't advertise similar products to not have to pay extra, but they would earn less. The law of the market was just that interesting. Of course, the Yamen's bulletin board couldn't put the advertisements on the front pages. They only put up the useful ones at the front. There were 2 copies, and both sides had to be displayed. The commoners who weren't in a hurry to work basically liked to look at the bulletin board in the morning. They would chat with others and discuss the state affairs. The commoners who were used to reading the newspapers came to the bulletin board today. When they saw the first 12 national policies, they suddenly felt unaccustomed. What's the meaning of this? A bunch of policies came out today? In front of the Yamen's bulletin board in Luoyang Prefecture of Hunan Province, a person who usually learned to read a few words from a child was stunned when he saw the 12 national policies. Usually, there would be a national policy every 10 days or half a month. Most of it was about the new laws. The economy was developing too quickly, so there was a need to constantly supplement the laws. Therefore, most of the time, it was about the laws. Most of the time, it was about the new security requirements and the situation of the poultry being farmed to let everyone pay attention. Most of the advertisements were printed according to the situation of each prefecture. Unless it was a chain store that crossed prefectures, there would be merchants from other places who would come to spend money. 1, 2, 3, 12. There are 12 in total. Another person followed. In fact, he was just showing off that he knew how to read. You still need to count one by one? At the end it says 12. Of course it's 12. The main question isn't how many, but what is written every day. The person who spoke first continued. Everyone looked at it as if they were reading it. Occasionally, someone would read a few words. Not only did they not read it completely, but even if they did read it, there were some who read it wrongly. Who can tell us what the newspaper means? Everyone crowded to look at it for a while and realized that they didn't understand. They began to look around for someone who understood, such as a scholar. Otherwise, if they let their children read it out at home, they wouldn't understand either. Everyone looked around for a while and finally found a scholar who had just finished his breakfast. More accurately, he was a teacher. He taught in the largest school in the prefecture and was a high scholar. Usually, he would only teach in the afternoon. In the morning, he liked to wander around the bulletin board to gain extra respect. Teacher Yuan, good morning. Quick, help me take a look. What's written on the newspaper? I don't understand. As soon as he arrived, someone greeted him. The teacher with the surname Yuan smiled reservedly. He strode through the path that others had made way for him to get close to the notice board. He looked up and said, the first rule, the first point is, it is a series of material tax forms minus the farmer's rent and poll tax. It is replaced by money. All farmers need to sell their grain to raise money. Teacher Yuan, can you tell us what it means? When the people around heard this, they couldn't understand. It means that in the future, you don't have to give them food or other things. You just have to give them money. Using money to pay the rent. Isn't that making things difficult for them? After Teacher Yuan finished explaining, he added another sentence. The people around looked at him and waited for him to continue. Look at this. You have to sell your own crops and exchange them for money to pay the tax. If you sell your crops for a lot of money, then it's fine. But if you sell your crops for a little money, then won't you lose money? And when the crops are harvested, it's also the time when the crops are cheap. How can the imperial court do this? Teacher Yuan's tone became serious. He was obviously very angry. He didn't understand how the imperial court changed in the blink of an eye. The people around started to discuss. Then what should we do? How can we do business? Even if we raise chickens, someone will come and collect them. It's the same for our crops. We have to wait for the government to come and take them away. Teacher Yuan, are you sure you didn't read wrongly? Teacher Yuan, please think of a solution. How did it become like this? Teacher Yuan, please read on and see if there are any other explanations. All right, I'll read it. Mr. Yuan suppressed his anger and continued reading the newspaper. The first and second point is that the cultivators are allowed to work with other cultivators in the area around them. All decisions will be made by the leader, and they will be protected by the corresponding laws. After reading the second point, the people around continued to wait for his explanation. Teacher Yuan pondered for a moment and then sneered. All right, you don't have to worry about selling your own crops or silk. The imperial court has already thought of a plan for you. 100 households will be grouped together, and one person will be chosen as the leader. Or you can group a village and choose one person to be the leader. If you want your own land, you can discuss with him and see what you want to plant. Once the decision is made, you are not allowed to change it. When the time comes, you will be responsible for whether the crops you grow lose or earn. If you don't know anything, just rent the land to him and wait for him to hire you as helpers. If you lose or earn, it will all belong to him. After all, you don't have to sell your own crops anymore. But if the leader feels that your family's health isn't good, and you work slower than others, he won't let you be his helper. You will have less income, and it will be worse than farming on your own. What a good imperial court, what a good national policy. This is clearly land annexation. This is the law of the jungle. This is self-elimination. I can't help but ask, has the Tang dynasty's emperor changed? Are Xiao Bao and Cuckoo not around anymore? Teacher Yuan had turned into a roar at the end of his words. His hands were clenched into fists. The people listening to him were dumbfounded. Even the yamen runners standing next to him were dumbfounded. According to what Teacher Yuan said, wasn't this a national policy? It couldn't be, right? For a moment the people were scared. They were afraid that Teacher Yuan's words were true. If the emperor was changed, then Xiao Bao and Cuckoo would also be gone. What should they do? The sky was falling. What nonsense are you talking about? A person walked out of the yamen. He was the secretary of the Department of Defense. The people all knew him. He was Su Wei Suingyi. Secretary Su Wei's eyes swept over the people and Teacher Yuan. He said, look at the back. The 12 national policies were written by Xiao Bao, and then unanimously passed by the imperial court. What happened? Do we need your money to see a doctor? Don't let children go to school for free? Don't you have a place to complain? Can't you eat and starve to death? Don't you have a single old man to take care of? Teacher Yuan shook his head and looked at the back. Indeed, Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's names were written. There was also a seal. He was even more puzzled. If it was Xiaobao's policy, why did he allow for the annexation of land? Furthermore, he used the first point to speed up the annexation of land the next day. The people around were not as worried. When they heard that it was Xiao Bao and Cuckoo who wrote the national policies, they were relieved. Then someone asked Teacher Yuan, Teacher Yuan, did you think wrongly? It was clearly written. How could I think wrongly? I am a high scholar. How could I not understand such a simple thing? Teacher Yuan, no one said that you don't understand. It's just that. Look at it from the beginning. Think carefully. Everyone makes mistakes, right? There were still people who did not believe him. Teacher Yuan was so angry that he did not speak. He looked at Tianer. Advisor Chao laughed and helped him out. It's just as Brother Yuan said. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo's national policies, according to the literal meaning, are to encourage the annexation of land. However, I don't think that they would have the intention to harm the people. It's just that we are unable to understand the deeper meaning. Everyone, there is no need to panic. That's right, that's right. What's there to be afraid of? Would Xiao Bao and the rest harm us? I don't believe it. They would have done it long ago. Why wait until now? Isn't that so? If they say that I am harming myself, I believe it. If they say that Xiao Bao and the rest are harming me, I don't believe it. I guarantee that there is something that we do not understand. Let's not worry about it first. Teacher Yuan, please continue reading. There are still 11 more. Teacher Yuan was clearly in a fit of pique and didn't say anything. I'll read it. Su Wei, who had already read the 12 national policies 3 times, stepped forward. Official Su, please continue with your work. Just find an official to do it. An official to do it is even busier. I'll read the same thing. The second policy, the Tang Bank will reduce the interest rate in one go and can increase the amount of loans in the future. Su Wei read the second policy out loud and explained it according to what he understood when he was reading the newspaper in the yamen. The purpose is to tell everyone not to keep their money in the bank. Take it out and spend it. If you are not willing to spend it, the interest rate will decrease when you keep your money in the bank. There is no need to worry about the money you have saved before. Furthermore, it encourages everyone to work together to open a workshop and take a loan from the bank. The interest rate will be lower than before. Furthermore, the bank will have enough money for you to take a loan. There is no need to be afraid that the bank will not have enough money. But money will become less and less valuable. Teacher Yuan could not help but say. Su Wei shook his head. That is hard to say. Whether money is valuable or not depends on its purchasing power, not how much it can be spent. The second policy is just like that. Su Wei then read the third policy, which was military service, and the fourth policy, which was for students to work as volunteers. The people did not understand the first 2 points, but the third point did not matter. Being a soldier was much better than being in the past. In the past, they had to prepare their own weapons and armor, and they were not paid. Furthermore, there was only so much time every year, and they could still shoot to satisfy their cravings. The food in the army would not be bad, and after some training, their bodies would be strong. In case there was a need to fight, they could pick up a gun and contribute to the country. The fourth policy was for students to work. If they want to do it, they can just treat it as training. Don't study all day and become stupid. Su Wei then read the fifth policy. The people felt that this was good, and it would be more lively in the future. The sixth policy was for lottery. The people were indifferent. Only those who opened gambling houses were troubled. The seventh policy was for craftsmen to use the same ruler. The people felt that it was not bad. In the future, when making furniture, there was no need to worry about the different sizes. The eighth policy was for food quarantine. The people around the announcement nodded their heads. This was right. What if they ate something bad? The ninth policy was for workers to have a minimum wage. Good. In the future, if any employer dared to give them less, they could sue them. As for rest, there was no need for that, right? Rest when you are tired. Rest when you are not tired. Just wait and see. If you really can't do it, you can do it secretly. The 10th policy was for the government to train. In the past, they could go to the yamen to learn, and then arrange for them to work. Now they just had to go to the yamen. Perhaps it would be a waste of time. They did not know if there was a need for them to learn. The 11th policy was for sellers and stalls to not have to pay any money. Was there such a good thing? There was no management fee. All the money they earned was their own. The 12th policy was for them to send things to distant people in the future through the yamen. They did not know if it was cheaper than the original. If it was cheaper, they could use the yamen. Would it be faster to send things? If it was faster, they could also use the yamen for the same price. Su Weinian explained a little, and the people followed suit. Their thinking was very simple. Everything was for their own benefit. Deeper knowledge had nothing to do with them. Alright, that's the general idea. There is a lot of knowledge in it, including the one in front of me. I have already read it 4 times. I still do not understand it. In any case, most of them seem to be beneficial to you. After Su Weinian finished, he added this sentence. He shook his head and remembered what he came out to do. He continued to work. After he left, Teacher Yuan was still in a daze. Previously, he had concluded that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's national policies were harmful. However, after the last 10 policies came out, they started to become good. What was going on? Teacher Yuan, look, you misunderstood Xiaobao and Cuckoo, right? I knew it. How could the two of them harm us? In the future, we can go and watch normal football matches. It won't be like now. Sometimes they play, sometimes they don't. It makes people anxious. Someone nudged Teacher Yuan and said, "But the first policy is indeed." I don't understand. Is there a need to say that Xiaobao is scheming? You may think one thing, but it is actually another. You may think that he is good to you, but he might not be good to you. You may think that he is bad to you, but he might not be bad. Yes, he is not bad, someone said at the side. Teacher Yuan really could not understand what was wrong. He shook his head. Forget it. I will take one step at a time. We will see in the future. I am going back. You can see for yourselves. After he finished speaking, he left with his hands behind his back. He bent down and lowered his head. It seemed that he was still thinking. The people did not disperse. They still surrounded the bulletin board and said a few words from time to time. They were mainly afraid that they would forget. There were 12 policies. They should memorize them first. It would be easier to show off when they told others later. Especially when their children came home from school. They would let them read it and ask them what it meant. If they could not answer, they would teach it to them. They would let them understand that parents were still very powerful. Chapter 1240. What are you going to perform tonight? Zhang Xiaobao asked Wang Wan as the two of them returned to the restaurant and waited for the news of the firing. Wang Wan thought about the few performances she usually prepared and replied, "How about I sing Xiao Hongqian? Song and dance. Then I'll sing Ocean's Laughter." Zhang Xiaobao followed suit. "Why don't you choose a few new songs? They're old songs that have been around for more than 100 years. There's nothing new about them for you and me," Wang Wan suggested. Zhang Xiaobao shook his head. "No. To us there aren't any new songs. The so-called new songs have been around for a very long time. Besides, the popular songs of that time didn't even last for more than a few years. If we hadn't come here, I reckon that after a decade or so of normal time, the people of that generation wouldn't even remember the popular songs." "That's true. Then why do you still remember Xiao Hongqian and Ocean's Laughter?" Wang Wan began to discuss this question with Zhang Xiaobao again. The two soldiers seemed to have forgotten that there were still several battlefields as they nervously prepared. It didn't matter if it was because they were confident of victory or because they didn't care. In any case, there wasn't a trace of the haze of war in the sky from them. Zhang Xiaobao thought about it and said uncertainly, "It's probably related to the mode. The two songs both use pentatonic modes, which is the easiest way to resonate with the human body and make it easier for people to grasp the intervals. Am I right? How would I know? Anyway, the Europeans like a different kind of structure, influenced by the 12 equal temperaments. It's mainly early church music, which generally pursues overtones. Later, due to the hard work of the colonial era, there were black elements in America. Under the influence of European music, rap music was added. Rap music is popular not because of the good mode, but because of the strong sense of rhythm. Different from the mode that affects the human body's body structure and voice resonance, the biggest influence is the human body's blood flow and heartbeat. It can be said that they lead to the same destination by different means. Wang Wan analyzed the relationship between the existence of music and people from another perspective. Zhang Xiaobao thought about it, but he really couldn't come to a conclusion. He could only return to the original topic. "Then, are we still going to sing Laughing at the Mortal World and Laughing at the Sea?" "Sing? Why wouldn't I? The 3 Strokes of Plum Blossoms is even more old-fashioned. Haven't there always been people who like to listen to it? There are a few songs in Carmen. Let's not talk about that. In the past, someone actually said that Sister Zhang sang better than the original version. Why don't you sing the Matador song from there?" Wang Wan had always liked the original version. She felt that the original version not only put in a lot of effort at the beginning, but also had a contemporary feel. "I'm not going to sing. I don't like narrative songs. I've realized that the difference between China's songs and Europe's songs is that they focus on the details. Just like language, drawing, and so on, China's songs focus on depth and connotation. When singing, Europe wants to directly express their delicate emotions through their voice, while China's songs focus on touching the inner feelings. Their ideologies are different, so it's very difficult to perfectly integrate them. If one day they really integrate, it's China that embraces them, not them absorbing China. The simplest example is the division of land. Their large land is divided into small pieces, divided into different countries. If it weren't for special geographical restrictions, it would be impossible for such a situation to exist in China. They would have been annexed long ago, or they would have been annexed by others. That's why our Chinese people are a nation that loves peace and stability. We don't like to divide a piece of land into many parts. And then we're always on tenterhooks about fighting each other. Zhang Xiaobao talked about ideology from music, and then praised his own nation. Wang Wan was angry and amused. We all know what that last sentence means, so don't say it. Okay, where are Xiaobei and the others? Zhang Xiaobao realized that he had been back for a while, but he didn't see his younger siblings. They're probably preparing for some performance. They didn't go out yesterday, saying that they were afraid that someone would attack them during the war. If they were hurt, it would affect us. The provincial governor invited them to Idyll school to take a look, but they refused. In their courtyard, other than teaching each other, they're assembling toys. Wang Wan smiled at Zhang Xiaobao. In fact, she wasn't worried about anything happening in Idyll. The guard she brought had firmly controlled the entire prefectural city. Her younger siblings were very sensible, and stayed at home to not cause trouble for the adults. Xiaobei and the others were currently in their courtyard. They weren't teaching each other, nor were they assembling toys. They weren't even preparing for a performance like Wang Wan had said. They were reading newspapers, ignoring advertisements and stories, and studying the 12 national policies together. Xiaobei's face was full of sadness. I can't see anything. It involves all kinds of aspects. It's a mess. Gap, this is the gap. Xiao Yuan supported his chin with his hand and nodded. There has always been a gap. I originally thought that the gap between us was gradually narrowing. Today, I realized that it was because our older siblings didn't use their full strength. The more I think about it, the more my head hurts. Why don't we just assemble toys? Toys. What program are they preparing? Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan were waiting for time. They did not wait for a telegram, but they did wait for someone to check on Xiaobei. They're playing Monopoly. Many people are busy. They want to add in the 12 national policies rules. They say that they want to carefully study the reforms in the game and reach half of your level. The person who went to check on them reported. After he left, Zhang Xiaobao looked at Wang Wan and smiled. Wang Wan also smiled and said, "The people who proposed the reforms in history are all heroes. What ability do we have? It's nothing more than summarizing the path taken by our predecessors. In fact, everything we have was given to us by our predecessors, so we have the obligation and responsibility to pass it on to our descendants." Wang Wan thought about the development of various parts of the world in various historical periods, and was filled with emotions. The figures that stood out in every period seemed to be right in front of her eyes. They were so vivid and distinct. Whether it was success or failure, there was a star that belonged to them in the night sky of history. Zhang Xiaobao smacked his lips twice, and knocked on the table with his hand. He said, "That's why humans are more powerful than other creatures. The inheritance of human experience is systematic. Xiaobei and the rest are really smart. They know that they don't understand, so they let people put the rules into Monopoly. As they play, they can feel the specific changes. This is an era full of vitality, and we have a lot of potential. What you can do is to invade, and you're encouraging me to invade as well." Wang Wan habitually attacked Zhang Xiaobao. "We're spreading the seeds of civilization, so that the people of the world can feel the abundance of spring and the harvest of autumn as soon as possible. And the heat of summer and the cold of winter, right?" Reporting a call from the front. "The vanguard of our First Army has engaged the garrison of the Kangduo. They're advancing at full speed under the cover of artillery fire." While Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan were leisurely chatting, a person who was guarding the telegram ran in and reported to the two of them. Okay. Zhang Xiaobao was very happy. They were finally fighting. As for the engagement, that was impossible. What kind of fire did the other side have? The other side probably had a stomach full of anger. Wang Wan thought for a while, and waved to the person to leave. Then she analyzed to Zhang Xiaobao. Using artillery, it's probably because the local garrison of the Kangduo has gathered troops. At the same time, the infantry also took bulletproof measures. If they use thick wooden shields, normal bullets can't penetrate them. At the same time, the enemy's arrows are also effective. The Kangduo are learning to be smart. Zhang Xiaobao nodded and agreed with Wang Wan's words. Hot weapons were indeed superior to cold weapons. It was an overwhelming advantage. However, the two of them pursued 0 casualties in the battle. As for running and falling to death, being bitten to death by poisonous snakes, or even dying of illness, that didn't count. To achieve 0 casualties, long-range attacks had to be in place. Otherwise, once they entered the range of the enemy's long-range weapons, there would definitely be casualties. That was absolutely unavoidable. Now what was tested was the supply of artillery shells. As long as they were willing to spend money, the Tang Empire's military supply could keep up. It wasn't difficult to destroy the enemy. Wang Wan still looked indifferent and said, "The Kangduo can only last through the first wave of attacks. Even if they make wooden shields, when the situation is out of control and they are defeated, they will definitely throw away the shields. Or, the main defensive weapons of the defending troops will be removed by the small cannons. War is about logistics. They have no way to use their advantages to counterattack, and can only passively defend. If we want to rely on mobile warfare, our commander must be stupid and advance into their encirclement alone. I believe that our commander won't be so stupid. Yes, it's just like India. Not the current India, but the India of our time. They only know how to buy weapons from others. They don't produce good weapons themselves and rely on buying. If they really fight, they will be used up after a few rounds. What will they do then? Buy more? If they don't use nuclear weapons, it won't take too long. 3 years, and the entire country will be worn down." Zhang Xiaobao followed and deduced. The cavalry that the Kangduo could think of was to gather at the periphery and wait for an opportunity to attack. Then, they would make simple defensive equipment. This should be the result of previous small-scale conflicts. But if they had to rely on bulky and heavy wooden and iron shields to block the barrage, and were blasted by the small cannons a few times, would the production be able to keep up? How many people and tools did they have to produce the shields? Thus, it sounded very serious. In reality, the use of artillery had always been beneficial to their side. As for which direction they should continue to advance and occupy, they would need to see the actual situation. It would take 3 to 5 days to understand. They're not going to fight a blitzkrieg, right? Zhang Xiaobao asked again. Relying on infantry to fight a blitzkrieg? Not to mention now, even Germany during World War II couldn't fight a blitzkrieg when faced with the current Kangduo. They had to fight a positional battle and advance step by step. Wang Wan chuckled and shook her head as she imagined the map of the Kangduo's territory. This was the strategy that had been formulated before. Originally, they wanted to wait for the Kangduo to gather more troops and supplies at the border. Then the navy would disembark. But there was a small problem, so they had to start the war early. Even if they started the war early, they had to take it slow. They had to give the Kangduo the illusion that the Tang Empire was attacking from land. The Kangduo probably wouldn't think that the Tang Empire would play a land battle. So, what we're waiting for now is Jinla's movement. I've been angry this whole time. Why did they have to wait for us to start the war? When their people go back, they'll give us some trouble. I'm guessing that they felt that they had received a lot of rewards from the Tang Emperor this time. They think that we have to be on good terms with them, because we want to fight. So they took the opportunity to indulge. But they forgot about the two of us. Fuck, they dare to bully the women of the Tang Empire. If I can take this lying down, I'm not a man. I'd rather not fight the Kangduo, to let them understand what they can do, and what they can't do. Zhang Xiaobao thought of the previous matter again. The more he thought about it, the more sullen he felt. Wang Wan's face was also cold. She gritted her teeth and said, "This is not over. Even if they don't resist and let us catch them, we'll have to punish them when we have time. After we complete the early strategic goal of fighting the Kangduo, you go and cripple Jinla through economic means. I'll organize the troops. If they make a move, We'll go and kill them directly. Reporting, our troops in mud polo have broken through Guangyan City and are camping outside the city. At the same time, we're chasing the enemy who escaped from the city in the form of small troops. We're not going to get supplies from the city because we're afraid that the people in the city will play tricks. We'll continue to bombard or use explosives to blow up the walls in other directions of Guangyan City. Another person came in to report. Got it. Go and wait. Send back as soon as there's news. Who's in command in mud polo? They didn't send electricity when they attacked, and only told us when they drove people out of the city? Isn't this called a general on the outside can't obey the orders of the emperor? We'll deal with him later. That's referring to the situation when the communication system was not developed in the past. Now there are telegrams and various transmission points along the way. Would he die if he told us in advance? When Zhang Xiaobao heard that the city was broken and the troops were camping, he remembered to send a message and curse it angrily. Wang Wan looked at Zhang Xiaobao's expression and said with a smile, "That's our family's people. They probably feel that it's meaningless to tell us in advance. If they tell us in advance, we'll fight. If they don't tell us, we'll still fight. It's better to tell them after the fight. If it were the generals of the imperial court, they wouldn't dare to do so. It's easy to be accused of having bad intentions. Our family's people can be so flexible. They're clearly playing with us. I can't say whether it's good or bad to have such soldiers under us." Zhang Xiaobao also laughed. His family's people could do so because of Wang Wan's teaching. None of them were serious at all. Especially when facing weak opponents, they always liked to show off. If he was right, what if something went wrong? If he was wrong, there were many such generals in history who were famous generals. All right, don't worry about him. If he can't fight, send a report to him in the middle of the night and scold him, Wang Wan said. He might not be able to sleep in the middle of the night. He'll definitely come up with some wicked ideas, like setting a trap, or something to let more man-eating drillers do a night attack. Zhang Xiaobao analyzed this person's personality. That's possible, Wang Wan agreed. Reporting, our troops guarding Gamma Labo have not found the enemy crossing the river to fight. They're now crossing the river. The vanguard has already passed by 15,000 people. Another person came in to report. Wang Wan frowned and muttered, "Then where are the enemy's ships?" Chapter 1241. The so-called crossing of the river was actually the Brahmaputra River, which was also the Brahmaputra River in India. Although it was called India, there were very few indigenous people there. The land was fertile, the flow of the river was abundant, and there was a lot of rain. There were also many types of animals and plants. The reason why there were so few people in such a good place was because there were also many floods. It rained almost every year, and most people did not have the courage to live there, especially the small rivers and tributaries. Because there were water, mountains, trees, and wild animals in the mountains, water could provide the necessities for people's survival. Thus, the cannibals treated this place as an important place to attack the Tang Empire. As long as the army crossed the river and continued north, some of them would die, and they would be able to reach Lhasa City. There were many good things in Lhasa City of Tibet. Other than the Tang Empire's army helping them when they were affected by disasters, the usual things were all transported to Lhasa City by the Tang Empire and sold there. Tibetan specialties were also sent to the city and then transported to Tang by the merchants of the Tang Empire. Trade with each other and exchange what they needed. The original Tibetans had better days, and the Tang Empire also got what it needed. Compared to the previous war, the trade activities were many times better. Then, what exactly was there in the city that the cannibals coveted? First, there were various advanced tools for accurate calibration. Second, there was a small hydroelectric generator and 2 small wind generators. There was also a munitions factory directly controlled by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. There was a medicinal material classification center, a simple processing center, countless pressure cookers, endless salted eggs and century eggs, cloth and silk from the Tang Empire, Finnish medicines, and hundreds of tons of salted fish and shrimp sent over from Qinghai Lake. There were also books, seeds provided by the Senongsi, and a large research branch set up in the area. There were barrels of soybean oil and high-quality white wine, cleaning products, skincare products, and iron ingots with good hardness and toughness. There was also a smelting workshop set up by the Tang Empire. There were 3 main telegraph stations, a substation for the Weather Collection and Measurement Department, a branch of the Institute of Disease Prevention and Research, a bookstore for the humanities and history editors, a breeding base for the military and police Tibetan mastiffs, a breeding base for goshawks, and a farm for other animals and birds. These were all things that the Tibetans did not even dare to think about in the past. They were a bunch of things that could directly form a social development system. Zhu Zan of Child was still the local manager, and the Princess of Jincheng still treated him as a married wife. The difference was that Zuzanchita had thrown the idea of independence beyond the 9th heaven and buried it in the bottomless abyss. What he had to do every day was to help manage the merchants that came and went, and to learn all kinds of books from Princess Jincheng. On the other hand, Princess Jincheng was a woman of her word. Other than raising the child, she would instill the thoughts of the great Tang into the Tubo people. Occasionally, when she was in a good mood or feeling unwell, she would allow the other women to accompany Zhu Zan for the night. When the weather was good, the couple would travel to the capital of the great Tang Empire and see if they could bring back anything good. Thus, such a good city was targeted by the man-eaters. As long as they could attack it, even if they couldn't defend it, they could move the craftsmen, students, and other things back. However, the other places were heavily guarded, especially the Wuchang region in the north. Originally, there was a direct route that could easily lead to the original location of the Turkic Khaganate. But now that place had become a training ground for the Great Tang. Small-scale conflicts were incessant, and all kinds of weapons were used for testing. In a situation where there was no other way, the man-eaters gathered an army of 120,000 and planned to sneak through the Brahmaputra River's sluggish basin. Then, they would cross the mountains and ridges to launch a surprise attack. The other armies in the other places would cooperate with them to feign an attack. Although it was called a feign attack, it was actually a suicide mission. The man-eaters' idea was not bad, and they were willing to pay a huge price for it, even going as far as to take a detour. According to the historical records that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan knew, they had never done so before. But the current Great Tang was developing too quickly, so quickly that it was like a piece of cake smeared with honey in the eyes of others. Everyone wanted to take a bite out of it, and then retreat, getting as much benefit as possible. It was much better than watching the Great Tang develop to its limits, and then turning around to bite them. Of course, if everything developed according to history, the Great Tang couldn't have sent scouts everywhere, especially the Brahmaputra River. If one went north, the geography was extremely harsh. Canyons, snowy mountains, and dense forests were not places that people should go. Man-eaters believed that they would have to sacrifice a lot to attack this place, but they would be able to catch the enemy off guard. Thus, they secretly built the ships. They didn't need ships that could be transported across the ocean, and they didn't need ships that could withstand strong winds or currents. As long as they could get the people to the other side of the river, they would have completed their mission. Man-eaters' calculations were not bad. In the past, if he didn't care about other battlefields and just concentrated his forces to attack, the Tibetan cavalry wouldn't have been able to hold. Now they no longer wanted to seek victory on other battlefields, even paying the price of religious compromise. But their opponent was not the original Great Tang, but the Great Tang controlled by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. The two of them would not allow their intelligence network to have a blind spot. No matter where the border was, regardless of the local environment, as long as there was a border, they would definitely send people to investigate. After the two of them received news of the man-eaters' movements, they also secretly sent their soldiers over, and they even sent a total of 46,000 people. Their goal was that after defeating the man-eaters, some would stay behind while the rest would continue the pursuit. The man-eaters had sent 120,000 soldiers, not more than 1 million, but less than 200,000. How many supplies would 120,000 soldiers need? Where were their supply points? Where was the source of the supply lines? Are there any local Indian ethnic groups involved? Both sides moved in the same way stealthily. The difference was that the Great Tang side sent over small cannons, which were mortars and grenade launchers. For this reason, the grenades were specially primed, otherwise, they wouldn't be able to be fired. As for why they didn't send the field cannons over, it was because they lacked transport helicopters. The two of them originally planned to attack when the enemy was crossing the river, and then continue to attack after crossing the river. How could they make the other party attack at the time they requested? As long as they sent out a small portion of their troops to stand on the other side of the river, the man-eaters would be afraid that the Great Tang would send more troops and expose themselves. Under such circumstances, they would have no choice but to attack earlier. The idea was good, and there weren't any problems during the operation. The problem was that when the man-eaters saw the small portion of Great Tang's troops, they didn't forcefully cross the river. From the simple telegram, the other party seemed to have given up. Wang Wan was puzzled. Their side had sent over 15,000 people, so where was the man-eaters' resistance? Whether or not their ships were captured by them could be judged from these 2 points, that the other party had made a strategic move in advance. Go and ask. The content of the telegram just now was too vague. Let them say a few more words. Zhang Xiaobao ordered the person who passed on the message. After the person left, Zhang Xiaobao didn't know whether to comfort himself or Wang Wan. He calmly said, "There's no need to rush. The man-eaters aren't gods. It's just that the information they sent over wasn't detailed enough. The commander there is Zhang Shogui, and he sent the eunuch Yang Xishuan to supervise the troops. We'll send 2 battalion commanders, graduates of the Third World. I'm not worried about the man-eaters suddenly disappearing, but I'm worried that the man-eaters will destroy the enemy's ships and kill the future slaves." Wang Wan continued. "That's true. We have information on him. This person likes to use the lives of his enemies to intimidate them. We don't need that now. I hope he learns to be smarter. Otherwise we'll lose slaves. I'll have him carry the stones himself." Zhang Xiaobao had a good understanding of Yang Xishuan. Wang Wan's words were also recorded in history. This person liked to kill, and he didn't even let go of captives. In Zhang Xiaobao's view, this was a form of intelligence. Killing the enemy's captives could intimidate the enemy, and at the same time, reduce the enemy's youth. Otherwise, if you attacked and captured a lot of people, bringing them back would be a problem. What he was afraid of was that he would use this intelligence on the man-eaters. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's goal wasn't to kill people, but to obtain resources. Human resources were also resources. They had only built one railroad, and they had to continue building it. Zhang Xiaobao suddenly said when he was thinking about who should die in the construction of infrastructure. "We also need people to blow up the river. Blowing up the submerged reefs is almost a death sentence. We can't use our Great Tang people. I can't bear to add people to it." Wang Wan looked at Zhang Xiaobao in confusion and asked, "Blow up what river?" "It's the river between us and India, the Brahmaputra River and the Brahmaputra River. If we can form a navigation channel, it will be very useful," Zhang Xiaobao explained. "No, the place we're connected to is affected by the geographical environment. It's not navigable. If we build a dam in the future, we can add a few sets of generators. Can you think of something more practical?" A map appeared in Wang Wan's mind. She shook her head and rejected Zhang Xiaobao's suggestion. "I'm being practical. The geographical environment can be changed. In the past, it didn't change because of India. China has to spend a lot of effort and countless manpower and material resources to transform the river so that it can be navigable. However, India directly said that you can come over. What do you think China should do? Is the investment in the early stage gone? Tell me, which river in the world can't be transformed? The main problem is whether the investment is proportional to the return. We're not at that time now. Why do you want to stop the duo crossing the river and send troops to track down their supply line?" Zhang Xiaobao analyzed the situation at that time and asked Wang Wan. "I'm thinking that if someone in India gets involved, we can attack them, question them, and force them to admit their mistake. Then, we can give up a line of the Brahmaputra River, including a certain area on both sides." They can't control it now, and there are always floods. They think that by paying a small price, they can get the forgiveness of the Tang Empire. So we can occupy the river, just like the Qing dynasty ceding land to pay reparations. Occupying the Brahmaputra River is occupying the lifeline. What's there to be afraid of floods? We can build a dam and slowly transform it. If we don't have the opportunity to occupy it, we will be struck by lightning. Wang Wan repeated the strategic intention that they had discussed before to Zhang Xiaobao. That's right. Then why don't we transform the river together? We can't even think about building a dam to block the river within 10 years. It's better to open it to navigation. Who said that canyons can't be bombed? Who said that canyons can't be bombed? Destruction is always easier than construction. As long as we are willing to sacrifice the lives of others, I promise to bomb the river within a year and complete control of the entire river basin within 3 years. That's the entire basin of the Brahmaputra River and the Brahmaputra River. I've already thought about it. Capture captives and let them bomb the canyons and reefs for me. If they don't die after the first bomb, I won't let them go a second time within a month. If they don't die 3 times in a row, I'll directly give them a generous reward and let them get rid of their status as captives and slaves. Then, our country's people who lost their land through the 12 national policies can go there and give them a large piece of land on the plains created by the river. They can buy cattle from India. Anyway, India doesn't value cattle, so they can buy them for our people to use. If it rains heavily and floods are coming, our people can directly retreat and rush over. It's not a pity to rush over the land that was taken for free. If there's any harvest, it's ours. Zhang Xiaobao was in a state of almost sleepwalking, imagining the good times in the future. Wang Wan also listened with a look of yearning. When Zhang Xiaobao finished, she pointed at Zhang Xiaobao's head and said, "You really don't blush when you talk nonsense. India doesn't value cattle? Value? I remember that Indians value the neem tree more. After other people plant it, other people can casually pick the branches and leaves of whatever they pass by and use it to brush their teeth. Can cattle be casually used by other people?" Zhang Xiaobao said with a serious look. Brushing teeth is valued, then cattle also needs to be valued, because Indians also use cow dung to brush their teeth. Say something else, I'm disgusted. Wang Wan patted Zhang Xiaobao on the shoulder. He actually led the topic to this. I'm disgusted too. Anyway, we have to occupy their livestock. The river has to be built, and people have to be arranged there. This is not called colonization. It's a normal migration, or it's arranged to a slightly more remote place to enjoy high-wage job opportunities. Zhang Xiaobao stopped himself from thinking about the habits of India and dreamed of planting his own land in other people's land. Report. The person who had just left came back and said to the troops guarding Karma Nagpo have sent back news again. They found that there are many cannibals, large and small, and there are countless boats. When the cannibals saw our small troops, they suddenly panicked and scattered. Our troops took the opportunity to cross the river and chased them. The enemy ran on horseback and ran on 2 legs. The enemy also threw away a lot of weapons, some made of wood and iron, and some made of wood. There are also places where they live, some made of branches, some made of leather. They also drank from wooden buckets. Some were spliced together with pieces of wood, but most of them were hollowed out in the middle of a piece of wood. Most of the food they eat is also made of wood. There are... Little Liang, get to the point. They foolishly sent back such detailed information. Why did you read it? Zhang Xiaobao glared fiercely at the person who reported. Did the daily habits of the cannibals need to be explained in a telegram? The person called Little Liang by Zhang Xiaobao smiled shyly and nodded. Okay, what Zhang Shogui mainly said is that they have already occupied the original camp of the cannibals. They just occupied it. Now some of the follow-up troops are left behind, about 5,000 people, and the others are crossing the river. The troops who have already crossed the river are chasing the enemy's scattered troops and capturing many prisoners, mainly to let the people who can speak the language of cannibals shout. General Zhang Shogui also said that a lot of the supplies of the cannibals are still there, not burned, and not protected by anyone. Zhang Shogui wanted to ask what to do next. He judged that the fleeing cannibals might look for grass roots to eat. Our troops only need to find a place with a water source to encounter the cannibals. But it is impossible for the fleeing cavalry to kill horses for food. It is more likely that they will run far away, at least to the next supply point on the supply route of the cannibals, or even attack the Indians to plunder survival resources and obtain physiological satisfaction. The main content of the telegram was relatively euphemistic, but the meaning was clear. The cannibals were defeated before the battle. Those are 120,000 people, and 120,000 well-prepared soldiers. They ran away when they met our small troops? Madam, do you believe it? Zhang Xiaobao asked. Little Liang, send back a telegram. Tell General Zhang Shogui to retreat immediately after a day's pursuit and defend the riverside. Use the resources provided by the cannibals as supplies. It is forbidden to kill prisoners for no reason, and it is forbidden to go in alone. Process the captured ships, and use the local resources to continue to build simple transport ships. Wang Wan instructed Little Liang. Little Liang did not ask any more questions, and turned to leave the telegram. Wang Wan turned back and said to Zhang Xiaobao, I believe it. Winning a war is not a matter of numbers. We made a mistake and overestimated the cannibals. They wanted to launch a sneak attack on us. When they see our people, the first thing they think of is the advanced weapons and communications of the Tang army. They are afraid that if they run too slowly, the Tang army will call in more people to attack them. If a few of them run first, they will definitely lose the morale of the entire army. It's not like this didn't happen when the Japanese attacked China in the past. In the First and Second World Wars, this kind of phenomenon is really too normal. What I want to say is that if they run away, our strategic purpose will not be realized. Isn't it to kill the enemy's strength? After they run away, how many people can we catch in a day's pursuit? Zhang Xiaobao felt that the cannibals were not giving them face. What could they do if they persisted? Couldn't they learn how to attack halfway? It seemed that they could not. As long as the people in front of them passed by, the machine gun positions and artillery positions would be set up. The gap between weapons made many tactics useless. Wang Wan did not continue to explain to Zhang Xiaobao. She knew that it was not that Zhang Xiaobao could not learn, but that sometimes he was not willing to learn military skills. Even if he knew, he still pretended to be stupid and asked her. Wang Wan was helpless and happy about this. She was happy because she understood that Zhang Xiaobao wanted to set her off, let her perform, and then be happy with him. Many men did not understand this. Generally, women understood, so their family life was very happy. What made her feel helpless was that Zhang Xiaobao actually knew that she understood his intentions, but he still pretended to be stupid. At this time, Zhang Xiaobao did not look pretentious but cute. He was really good at coaxing girls. Hubby, tell me, how did you train? Wang Wan suddenly asked. It had nothing to do with the war they were talking about just now. I saw it in family psychology and couple psychology. Zhang Xiaobao immediately knew what Wang Wan was asking, and his current behavior and tacit understanding explained his understanding of the two kinds of psychology. What I'm asking is, forget it. I'll tell you about the 3 essentials and the knowledge of how to use them to survive, okay? Wang Wan returned to the previous topic. Okay. Zhang Xiaobao sat upright. Chapter 1242. First point. Wang Wan raised a finger. Zhang Xiaobao looked at it seriously. When he realized that it was not the middle finger, he did not do anything else. To survive, the military structure cannot be lacking too much. Even if there is only one person left in a battalion, the structure is still there. Why is it a battalion and not a squad, platoon, or company? Is it because there are more people in the battalion? Zhang Xiaobao said enthusiastically. There are more people in the regiment. I am talking about our time, not now. Now the regiment is under the battalion. The battalion now is a regiment, or a reinforced company? Yes, reinforced company. Now, a regular battalion has about 600 to 700 people, and a reinforced company can have more than 1,000 people. For example, Guards Company. Zhang Xiaobao continued to be enthusiastic. Yes, now we are not talking about guards or not. We are talking about why the battalion structure needs to survive. The number of people in our battalion can form a natural survival unit. It is gathering, farming, hunting, guarding, and building. The number of people in a battalion can be replenished, and in the case of no one to rely on in the wild, they can survive independently. In fact, they can even survive, but it is very difficult. As for a platoon of 30 people, can they survive? In theory they can. If they want to live a good life, half of them need to be from the special forces, and the other half need to graduate from the Shonan Science and Technology University. Then their survival rate is higher than that of a battalion. Are you saying that almost all of them are like the two of us? Zhang Xiaobao puffed out his chest and said confidently, "Your role will not be reflected in the situation where we do not meet other tribes. Then what if we meet them? Very simple, we will no longer be two people. They will be confused by you and then work for us. Even if there is a language barrier, I believe that you have the ability." "Thank you. You are welcome. That is why, in order to maintain the survival of an army, the existence of the structure is very important. It is enough to replenish the personnel. The role of the veterans must not be ignored. The second point is that we need a strong political leader. In the situation where we cannot achieve military victory, he must use his rhetoric to paint a picture of a pie for the soldiers. Is it to quench one's thirst by looking at plums?" Zhang Xiaobao echoed. "More or less. Under normal circumstances, this political leader can't be someone who participated in the direct command of the battle. Otherwise, confidence won't be able to gather. If he's still a commander who participated in the battle, he can still play the role of winning people's hearts after his failure. Then he's not an ordinary person. For example, Napoleon. I think that in this era the two of us should be fine, right?" Zhang Xiaobao didn't have much confidence when he spoke. "Who knows? The people of the Great Tang already treat us like gods. In their hearts, we represent invincibility. If we lose, then I'll have to readjust my domestic policy. How about we also make a movie and advertise it, saying that we had times of failure, but in the end we stubbornly survived. This way, we'll leave a psychological hint to the people that we're also humans. Our strength lies in our tenacity." Zhang Xiaobao smacked his lips, as if he didn't want to adjust the policy after failing. "Do you think it'll work?" Wang Wan asked. "No, absolutely not. We're gods, we're not mortals. The people think so too. Third, what's the point of thinking about this? I don't believe that there's anyone who can compete with us in terms of military and economic power now. At most, a sudden natural disaster will cause losses to our army, but we can slowly push forward and try to circumvent the weather disasters as much as possible. The third is simple. In addition to the above structure, we can't lose much. We also have to have a political figure with strong affinity and charisma. We also have to collect the necessary resources for human survival. Snow mountains and grasslands are not easy to live in. That's why I admire the Red Army at that time. Brainwashing needs to be done to a certain extent." Wang Wan raised her third finger and said. Zhang Xiaobao rubbed his nose and asked, "Then, what does that have to do with your previous arrangements?" "The third is that they need water and food. There are more fish and shrimp in the river, and many animals go to the river to drink water. We just have to leave the boats and search along the river. Why should we follow behind and eat dust? What if the small pursuing force is surrounded and annihilated?" Wang Wan finally said why she had told him that the troops would be back in a day. If the defeated army wanted to regroup and rest after losing all their supplies, they had to find a place with sufficient water, not all of them going to their long supply line. Only when the defeated army went there would the people at the supply transit point would be scattered. The combatants would eat and drink, and then take away the valuable things. The non-combatants would take away the relatively less valuable food and fodder. They would never be entrenched, unless it was the second line of defense that had been set up before. The idea of the cannibals at the Brahmaputra River was to launch a sneak attack. Their usual supplies were calculated, and even slightly insufficient. Why would they set up layers of defense and play a strategic game of depth? Listen to you. You're the commander. Do you mean that my logistics supply has to be increased to the Brahmaputra River line? Zhang Xiaobao considered his mission. Originally, it was to defend. Now that a large portion of the more than 40,000 people had advanced, the supply line would inevitably be extended. Yes, your mission is very important. Think about it now. I'm going to see my brother and sister. I'll cook tonight. Wang Wan got up and planned to leave, so that Zhang Xiaobao could think about where to get people to send supplies to the front line. Zhang Xiaobao tapped his face a few times with his hand, and said to Wang Wan, who had walked to the door, "Tell the kitchen to prepare the seafood for spicy soup and chicken soup. I'll go over to prepare the ingredients later." "You're not thinking about logistics?" Wang Wan asked in surprise. "No need. I'm not going to send food to the front line over there. Tell them to save their bullets. Don't shoot hundreds of bullets when facing one person. I'll get someone to send ammunition once, and bring enough money. Let them find a place in India where there are people to buy things," Zhang Xiaobao said casually. Wang Wan raised her eyebrows. "Buy?" "Yes, buy. If we encounter a large number of Indians, use our Tang dynasty money to buy from them. The use of international currency will be perfectly reflected at this moment. Let them tell the Indians that if they don't want to use money to buy gold, they can go to Tang dynasty to buy other things, or wait for Tang dynasty merchants to go over," Zhang Xiaobao said with certainty. Wang Wan thought about it, and felt that it was possible. There might be people in Tang dynasty who had never heard of countries like India or India, but the Indians would definitely have heard of Tang dynasty. For the Indians, it was very cost-effective to exchange food for foreign currency. Usually, they would not be able to exchange their food for Tang dynasty's money, because Tang dynasty did not lack food. Just as she was about to agree, Wang Wan suddenly thought of something very important and asked Zhang Xiaobao, "Are you sure they know about Tang dynasty's money?" "It's fine as long as they know the Tang dynasty's army. We don't have to print a batch of fake money for them. Now that place is not completely under our control, right? And there are many people there, right?" Zhang Xiaobao said. "Where?" Wang Wan was confused. "Trust River," Zhang Xiaobao said. "Then it's called Indus River in our time. Do you think there are people there?" Wang Wan rolled her eyes at Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao did not blush at all. "Yes, there should be." "Then, is there anyone in Pakistan's Fort Murmak now?" Zhang Xiaobao asked again. "Yes, the duo cannibals are there. There are quite a few of them. It's an important entrance for us to attack the duo cannibals. Do you really not remember? Or are you just trying to find something to say?" Wang Wan was too lazy to continue talking. Yes. I'm thinking of something else. Let them quickly take down Fort Murmak. What is it called now? No name, right? It's the Laval tribe. What are you going to do?" Wang Wan asked. "Occupy. Let the troops be fast. First, occupy a few salt mines. Send a report to Lesa City, and let them print salt tickets. Mobilize Shuiyan's family, and send the printed salt tickets to our troops in Brahmaputra River. Let them rob some horses, and quickly go to the relatively nearby places to tell the locals that we have salt tickets. We will exchange them for salt later. Isn't it more direct than money?" Zhang Xiaobao thought of a solution in the blink of an eye. Wang Wan sighed. She knew that the troops would be stationed there for a long time in the future. That was because the current Hindus did not know that the place Xiaobao wanted to occupy had several very good salt mines. Their salt mainly came from the original Tubo side, which was Qinghai salt. How much salt does that place have? It could be used to build roads. However, it was very expensive to bring it to India. How expensive was it? Salt itself was a currency, and its value was very high. Ever since her family occupied Qinghai Lake, she had made a lot of money just selling salt. Of course, for the domestic market, it was just a flat transportation fee, but not for India and Duoshire. This was probably the reason why Duoshire always wanted to attack. In the past, trade was not restricted. Now salt was a strategic resource. If it were anyone else, they would not be willing to be restricted like this. Therefore, it seemed that most of the people fighting were the various countries and vassals of India. In fact, Duoshire and the various countries in India had discussed this. Different religions could unite when they had a common enemy. Wang Wan knew that even though the Indians who had been convinced by the Polyeder were not helping either side, they had been secretly helping the Polyeder all along. Once they knew that there was good salt at their doorstep, they would almost 100% send troops to get close and try to get it. It could also promote the temporary alliance of their various countries and races. Of course, if her army was strong enough, it could also become a large trade market and conduct more trade with various countries and tribes in India. Xiao Bao, I can't think of what will happen after your goal is achieved. We have to continuously transport arms and medicine there. Don't you understand what kind of demand the Indians have for salt? Wang Wan wanted to persuade Zhang Xiaobao to take back this decision. After all, her family still controlled an area of Qinghai Lake. Anyway, they were selling salt. Why should they cut off the original market? Consequences? Can we still fight a planetary war? Zhang Xiaobao pretended to be stupid and said. Chapter 1243. Then you should organize the logistics of the space battleship to fight Star Wars. I'll tell the kitchen to make malatang tonight. Sichuan is more humid like the sea. Eating more spicy food will help with blood circulation. Wang Wan didn't plan to talk nonsense with Zhang Xiaobao. With a flash, she disappeared from the door. Zhang Xiaobao sat there in a daze. Suddenly, he got up and chased after her. As he chased, he shouted, "Wait for me, I'll go too. I have to tell the kitchen to prepare rice noodles. Just seafood malatang won't be able to fill my stomach." When he caught up with Wang Wan at the staircase, Zhang Xiaobao added, "Today's soup should be bland and less salt. We're not some Indian, Arabian, or polyglot. They shouldn't eat too much salt, they'll be thirsty. The problem is that they don't have salt. The drying method of sea salt hasn't been passed to them yet. You don't let their people get close. Say they're stupid. Why don't they think of ways to learn from Japan and Xinhua? Didn't we have an alliance in the past? That time with Japan." Wang Wan felt that it was sad for a nation to be controlled by salt. "In the past, we worked with many countries in the world. Have we learned all the techniques? How slow is it to directly dry seawater? How many of them know that they need to put in brine later? Let the people by the sea continue to boil salt and put a rope or something in a container. It's good to crystallize. Speaking of which, our people are the ones who are blessed. How much did salt cost when we came? How much does salt cost now? In daily life, other than water, the cheapest thing is salt. 1 copper coin is enough for a person to eat for half a month. This is because the transportation cost is high." Zhang Xiaobao recalled and felt satisfied. He continued to work hard to improve the living conditions of others. Then he sighed. Salt is the root of so many racial wars. When Wang Wan arrived at the entrance of the kitchen, she stopped and admitted, "Indeed, there are many wars caused by salt. Wars between races, wars between religions, wars between countries, and wars between people. Food and salt are the most basic needs for survival. You can make the arrangements. At worst, we can increase the war investment and try to see if controlling a country's salt can stop its gradual rise. Don't always think about investing. There are returns. They are all places with slavery and caste systems, right? If we control the salt mines there, we will directly control the 2 river basins of India, the Sindhi River and the Brahmaputra River, not the Ganges River. According to what you said, the Ganges can also be controlled because the Brahmaputra River is further away from the Sindhi River. It is now called the Naga River. The 2 rivers basin refers to the place between the 2 rivers. Doesn't that mean you want to control the whole of India? What I mean is that you should try not to use force to conquer India, because the man-eaters still need us to fight a long war with them. You can give the Indians more preferential treatment in trade." Wang Wan was afraid that Zhang Xiaobao would calculate and eventually force the Indians to launch an all-out war. That would be very busy. Zhang Xiaobao lowered his head as if he was thinking seriously, and then looked up. Preferential treatment, it must be preferential. In the past, if it was half a kilogram of salt in exchange for a slave, I will increase the price by 5 times. 2 kilograms and a half of salt in exchange for a slave, male or female, but not a child. I will not let them raise a child. Their own country has not yet understood how to raise a child. There are also ceramics, silk, glass mirrors, and tea leaves. If it really doesn't work, I will specially mix various kinds of curry powder for them. I would rather let the Tang people eat less chili and provide them first. Wang Wan shook her head and stopped talking to Zhang Xiaobao. She opened the door and went into the kitchen. As soon as she said not to force the Indians to launch a war against the Tang Empire, Zhang Xiaobao used other means to tempt the Indians to fight their own people. Slaves were not planted. There needed to be war to plunder, and they needed to be oppressed by caste to obtain slaves. The kitchen of the Blue Sea Silver Sand restaurant was very clean. The bluestone floor had to be cleaned every day, and all the dirt had to be sprayed with disinfectant. If someone wanted to eat at night, another kitchen would be used. The chopping boards for raw meat, cooked food, and vegetables were separated. Except for the chopping board that needed to be chopped raw bones, the rest were all made of bamboo. After using them, they were brushed with an iron brush. After a few days they were thrown away. Anyway, bamboo grew quickly. When Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao came in, they heard the sound of cooking and cutting. Because there was no range hood, the air was full of the smell of various dishes. Zhang Xiaobao sniffed. There is the smell of chopped green onions. How many dishes don't have chopped green onions? I can still smell the oil. Wang Wan also sniffed and looked for the person in charge in the smoke, who was the head chef. It was a little early for the kitchen to cook now, but the people in the inner courtyard didn't eat in a big pot as long as they could afford it. They would only cook in a big pot when they had no other choice. At that time, even Xiaobei and the others would have to eat with them. Now that they could afford it, the restaurant cooked in advance and put them in insulated food boxes. When the time came, they would take them out for the inner courtyard to eat. Therefore, they were very busy. The head chef had good eyesight and soon found that there were 2 more people in the kitchen. He came over and asked, "Young master, are you two going to? We are going to eat malatang tonight. Make some preparations. There are also rice noodles. We will eat them during the performance. Find someone to prepare enough cooked food for the performance venue. We can use a big pot." Zhang Xiaobao ordered. The head chef nodded and suddenly thought of something. He said to Zhang Xiaobao, "Young master, there have been a lot of cows and sheep recently, especially females." Zhang Xiaobao didn't say anything. He looked at the head chef and waited for him to explain. "Most of them are people from the west. They drive the cows and sheep and drink milk along the way. When they reach Idyll prefecture, they sell the animals and find other jobs," the head chef said. "Oh, I see." After saying that, Zhang Xiaobao didn't give any instructions. He turned around and left with Wang Wan. "The shadow of war hangs over the sky. I hope they will come more often," Zhang Xiaobao said as he came to the door. Wang Wan nodded. "They are from Tubo, which is on the border with India. They don't want to be directly involved in the war. When they found out about the cannibals and Indians, they had no choice but to come here with their family property. The males were probably killed and eaten along the way. This is an abnormal loss in war. It's just a small loss. It's okay. Give the order. Let the merchants in Jiannan Road buy livestock at a normal price. They will find a place to build a farm. There is a lot of alfalfa, so it's not worth much. We can make up for the loss in 2 or 3 years. Moreover, the livestock we will buy along the way will be in good shape. Their genes will be very good." Zhang Xiaobao was optimistic. It wasn't a big problem to exchange livestock from the Indians and Indians. "Let's go and see Xiaobei and the others." Wang Wan pulled Zhang Xiaobao to the courtyard of her younger brother and sister. 5 o'clock. "Let's go until we reach Hongnon County. I will invest 5,000 strings of cash to build a local market. You have to buy when you come in." After Xiaobei threw the dice, he picked up his little figure and walked 5 steps forward to an open space. He took out the fake money that represented 5,000 strings of coins from his box and handed it to the game referee. He said happily, the map they used was a very vague and abstract map of Hunan province. It was much more profound than the Monopoly games played by ordinary children, but it was also much simpler than the games played by adults. Of course, it couldn't be compared to the top-ranking assessment. That kind of assessment not only depended on how much assets you had, but also your assessment results. If your assessment results were good, the bank would give you a loan to help you do business in the real world. It was the same as when you came up with a plan and looked for venture capital. After Xiaobei finished speaking, The referee picked out a small model of the market from the box and placed it next to Xiaobei's little figure. The map was very big. It was 11 meters long and 5 meters wide. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to cover the entire Hunan province. If the game didn't end today, they would remember the location and roll up the map. They would put it back the next time they played. That's not right? I took out 5,000 strings of cash. Why did you give me a small market? Hongnon County is a big county, not a small county. It's the one that had a flood. Xiaobei looked at the model and realized that it was a small market. She turned to look at the referee. The referee smiled and explained, "It's a small market. The price of the materials used to build the market has increased. It's mainly reflected in the cost of labor. Hongnon County used to be an important county where the army was stationed. It is now a Shang County and has a lot of farmland. Due to its good location, there are many cattle." That's right. With many cattle, it means that the cost of labor has decreased. Why is it still expensive? Xiaobei argued. If she had known, she wouldn't have spent the money on the market. Because the land is grouped into a group of 100 households and villages. After the merger, there are cattle for large-scale farming. The team leader fired many of the original farmers. A portion of the fired farmers left the area to seek more income. Some of them wanted to do small businesses. Some of them had good skills and were given a very high grade during the assessment. Hence, their income was high. The final portion went to participate in training. Hence, there was less cheap labor available in the area. The referee patiently analyzed the situation. Xiaobei blinked and looked at the other 8 people. Everyone looked at each other and communicated with their gazes. After a while, Xiaoyuan reacted and said, "So the effects of the 12 national policies on society are so direct? Then what will happen if the population of Hongnon County decreases? Will it be demoted to Zhongxian County?" No, because Hongnon County is an important county in Hunan Province. It has developed water transportation. Furthermore, the county will increase the number of merchants seeking opportunities. Hence, there are more immigrants than locals leaving. However, the newcomers are usually people who don't have any skills in their original areas. They won't go to the market. Instead, they are willing to accept low wages and squeeze into the service industry, as well as the port transportation industry. The referee explained to Xiaoyuan again. Xiaoyuan lowered her head and thought hard. Xiaonan interrupted and asked, "Will the previous port workers of Hongnon be affected? What will happen to them?" "That depends on how many new products Hongnon has produced. What's the concentration of production efficiency and demand for goods? If the merchants prefer luxury goods, it will cause a large influx of luxury goods from outside in a short period of time. If the local workshops and agricultural groups further increase their efficiency, it will speed up the export of local goods. Because the original port workers of Hongnon have rich experience, the new laborers working at the port will not be as efficient and safe as the local workers. Hence, the wages will be divided into different levels. At the same time, the local workers will be promoted to become the foreman of the new workers. The referee continued to explain patiently. These 9 little guys were the hope of the future. They had to be taught well. It's a loss. Xiaobei didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the explanation. Hence, she agreed to spend 5,000 strings of coins to buy a small market. The main reason was that her market was beside the county, far away from the workshop. Furthermore, there were many shops in the city. Actually, I should have built a chess room, Xiaobei added regretfully. What you should have built is a gambling site. The investment is small, but there are many people entering and leaving the city. Zhang Xiaobao's voice sounded at the door. Chapter 1244. Xiaobei looked back at her brother and sighed. Alas! There are 12 national policies. Everyone is anxious. It's hard enough to play games, but I don't know what it's like in real life. Just do what you're supposed to do. Let's take a rest. We'll leave the city in a while. There will be a good show tonight, Zhang Xiaobao said to his brothers and sisters with a smile. The little guys began to prepare. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan also went back to their room to rest. Night fell as everyone was looking forward to it. Tens of thousands of Tang citizens, who had passed the household registration verification, came to the west side of Idyll City. The stage was not facing one direction, but was surrounded by the crowd. It was a test of the actors' ability to control the situation. They had to take care of all aspects. There was an empty space in the crowd facing the north. Zhang Xiaobao and the others sat there and put the Malatang utensils on the rack. People in other places began to give out lunch boxes. There were no disposable plastic boxes. They were made of thin bamboo slices and could be used again after being cooked. 2 copper coins per serving was enough to cover the cost. As for the snacks, they were handed over to the local merchants to sell. They didn't care how much they sold them. While the host was still talking on the stage, the whole place was filled with the smell of food. Fortunately, the performers had eaten a little in advance. Otherwise, it was easy to not be able to continue the performance. Many people opened their lunch boxes and looked at the food inside, then closed them again and waited until midnight to eat. Although they had been informed that there would be a restaurant selling lunch boxes at night, and they had not eaten dinner, they could not bear to eat now. Otherwise, what would they do when they were hungry later in the night? The host was stirring up the audience's emotions. Seeing this, he pretended to be angry and said, "You look at me after looking at the lunch boxes. Do you think I'm a dish?" The crowd burst into laughter. "Okay, let me tell you. There will be a midnight snack. If you don't eat now, you won't be able to eat too at night. If you take it away, you'll have to pay for the lunch boxes. How about this? In order not to waste everyone's time watching the show, let's eat first. Before the actors appear on stage, I'll sing first. I'll sing a Jiangnan's Purple Bamboo song. I'll repeat it 20 times, and I believe you'll finish eating." The audience continued to burst into laughter. They had never seen the same performance before. In the past, when they had seen a song and dance performance, it was very serious. Whether it was singing or dancing, it was all methodical. The noble mood made the audience full of admiration for the actors. Only when they were listening to storytellers in the tea house would they relax a little. Therefore, when it came to people who sang and played on the stage, they wanted to listen but were also restrained. When they finished listening, they felt that their souls had been washed away. However, if they wanted to feel happy, they needed to flatter others afterwards. There was no such thing on the spot. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan naturally knew what the audience wanted. When it came to elegance, the two of them knew it. Moreover, they could arrange it very well, ensuring that the atmosphere of the venue, as well as the actors' expressions and professionalism, would allow the audience to understand the artistic conception of spring and snow. However, even after the commoners comprehended it, they still didn't gain anything. They couldn't possibly learn it so professionally. Therefore, the two of them began to use the performance method they had at that time. In fact, it evolved from the form of the northeastern two-people rotation. Some people said that two-people rotation evolved from the beggar's method of falling lotus. In any case, regardless of the origin, this method was chosen because it was closest to the commoners. It refined the singing and communication of folk songs, forming an all-round contact and interaction with the commoners from language to dance to musical instruments. During the performance, the actors showed self-deprecation, ridicule, commoner thoughts, carefree, and acknowledgement of the reality of society and unyielding. This was the portrayal of the soul of every normal commoner. Therefore, when it came to the two of them, all the performances and programs were in this style, even if it was a gala on CCTV. But they also understood that at that time, not everyone liked it. A small number of people were unhappy when they saw it. One was people who were criticized by the content of the program, such as officials. The other was a small number of people who lived at the top of the pyramid. They hoped to hear an aria from an opera, to see the fingertips glide over the 88 black and white keys. And then they would squint and think with enjoyment that this was the Ninth Symphony, or to listen to the high mountains and flowing water, the kind of zither where the performer had to sweep the zither 72 times, which was to sweep the strings continuously, and then think beautifully. This was the 72 rolling and flowing water. Or it would be a national symphony. First it would be Jiangnan Spring played by the flute. Then it would enter the main melody. When it heard the part about the forced marriage, it could even hum in its heart. Duashi laudo sua, duashi laudo lai 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 lai. But which commoner would have the time to remember that the sound that appeared was a horn? Who would care about the change in tone of the main spin during the butterfly transformation? The commoners would usually hum a few lines of the main melody and sing the lyrics. The green grass is green and the blue flowers are in full bloom. If it was the zither, the commoners were more willing to use it as a companion and sing the song, Swallows Fly Together, which was sung by the very famous Qian Xuesen and his wife, Jiang Ying, when they were childhood sweethearts. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan also liked it very much. Occasionally they would sing, Swallows Fly Together. The picturesque railings are quiet in the evening breeze. Now, Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan had their family, who were in charge of entertainment, learn elegant and popular ways. If there were people who needed elegance to eat in a restaurant, they would let them experience this kind of atmosphere. Of course, being elegant also meant that the price was high. Moreover, the restaurant also specially provided a venue for the guests to enjoy a Western symphony. There were pianos and so on. But they had only practiced for a short time, only 7 or 8 years. The problem was that the guests did not know what a rhapsody was, so it was fine if they did not play it. Li Longji had once asked Pei Guangting to treat him to a meal. Pei Guangting's family was rich, and because he was an official of the imperial court, he had a 30% discount. Therefore, a Blue Danube waltz only cost him 4,900 strings of coins. Including the dishes and drinks, that meal came to a total of 6,125 strings of coins. The change was rounded up, and he only received 6,100 strings of coins. He gave him a small gift and did not give him an invoice. Since then, when Li Longji asked people to treat him to a meal, he would change the program to crosstalk, skit, or sing a few songs. Today's performance was free, so Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan did not intend to put anything expensive on the stage. The piano was quite heavy, and it took a lot of effort to move it around. Tonight's performance did not have a duet or an allegro. There were a few folk music pieces to be played separately, and in unison with the folk music. There were also a set of timpani, a drum set, 2 cellos, a harp, 2 trumpets, a trombone and 2 guitars. Unfortunately, there were no effects instruments, and the timbre was required. It could be considered a combination of Chinese and Western music, although there were no such instruments in the West. The main thing was that Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao were going to sing, laughing at the mundane world, and laughing at the vast sea. Zhang Xiaobao chose the Mandarin version, as he felt that the Cantonese lyrics sounded better. However, in terms of emotional expression, Huang Zhan's version was better. Wang Wan also chose the Mandarin version, as the Cantonese lyrics were a bit of a failure. Of course, these instruments and musical scores were all taken out by Wang Wan. She knew how to play them, and she could even teach Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao had always been very sentimental about this. If only he could have been born in the same family and received the same kind of nurturing. How good would that have been? Wang Wan also sighed. Hardships made people. Xiaobao had fought his way up from the bottom of society, showing off his heroic spirit. His life was not in vain. The host on the stage did not know more about the meaning behind this, nor did he know about the past encounters of the young master and young lady. At this time, he was singing the Purple Bamboo tune. Sometimes he would spin around, sometimes he would do a handstand, but he did not stop singing. Originally, it was time for others to eat, but when they saw him playing around on the stage, everyone looked at him. After singing twice, the host half knelt on the ground and stuck out his tongue in tiredness. He said, "Eat, I'm so tired. Why aren't you eating? How many times do you want me to sing? Everyone, please be merciful." There was a cheer from below, and the children brought by the adults also jumped and clapped happily. The whole party had just started and was full of jubilation. But who would have thought that there was gunfire somewhere else? Zhang Xiaobao had a gratified smile on his face. While cooking seafood skewers for his younger siblings, he also cheered along with them. Wang Wan also put her hand in her mouth and whistled loudly, under the surprised gazes of Xiao Bei and the others. Then Xiao Bei and the others understood. They had to be as happy as possible today, so they coordinated the rhythm and shouted together, "Sing, sing, sing, sing 100 more times." The host, who could control the whole scene, naturally paid a lot of attention to the north. He was a spy, so he had to be vigilant of the situation below on the stage. When he saw the little ancestors shouting, he could easily see their mouths under the bright lights, so he made a bitter face at Xiao Bei and the others. He turned around, pointed behind him, and said, "Did you see that? Did you hear that? Just because you didn't eat, our little ancestors made me sing 100 times. I'm so tired." When the audience heard the host's words, they all stood up and looked at where Xiao Bei and the others were. Actually, only the front could see, but the people behind were blocked. Carry us up high." Xiao Bei had a chance to show off, so she quickly instructed the people around her. Thus, a simple human ladder was set up. At the bottom were 3 people, and at the top was an adult. The adult was riding a little fellow on the adult's neck. There were a total of 9 human ladders. Xiao Bei supported the head of the bodyguard with one hand and held a string of sea cucumber with the other. In fact, it was only half a string. She waved it vigorously, then stopped to take a bite, indicating that she was also eating. She had the temperament of a celebrity and was not afraid at all. Xiao Yuan and the other 8 people were much worse than Xiao Bei. They could only wave their hands and did not do anything else. When Xiao Bei finished eating half of the sea cucumber, she finally got someone to put her down. The audience was excited and sat back down after a while, burying their heads in eating. They were indeed hungry. If they did not eat now, it would be even more difficult to eat later when a better program came up. The host did not continue singing on the stage. Instead, a female host came up and played with him. This kind of thing had not been rehearsed before. In fact, all the program arrangements had not been rehearsed. What they usually practice was the basics. As long as they had a solid foundation, they could do whatever they wanted when it was time to perform. In the entire Tang dynasty, the family performance team that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan organized was the only one that could organize and perform immediately when Li Longji suddenly arrived and requested to watch the program. The two of them joked on the stage for more than 10 minutes, and the audience had already finished their food at the fastest speed. Looks like everyone has finished eating, right? I won't wait for those who haven't finished eating. If you stay any longer, it will be my performance. Oh, there's still that person. Alright, let's watch the first program. A famous beauty from Tang Dynasty will perform a song and dance for everyone. Xiao Hongchen, please take the stage. After the host finished his speech, he was the first to applaud. The audience did not know who it was, nor did they know who Xiao Hongchen was, but they still followed suit and applauded enthusiastically. Chapter 1245. At this time, Wang Wan had already changed her clothes in the dressing room below the stage. She wore a pink dress with many gold and silver threads. Part of her hair hung down from her temples, while the rest draped over her shoulders. The head ornament was inserted almost all over her head, trembling and reflecting the light. Other than her eyes, the rest of her face was covered by a horizontal veil, and there was a red dot between her eyebrows. When the song started, that set of instruments was used. This set of instruments was usually not taken out casually outside. Even when eating in a restaurant, there was no drum accompaniment. At first, the people around thought that it was a jie drum, but later they realized that it wasn't. Before they could figure it out, they saw a woman in pink walk up from the slanted steps below. She had a small microphone around her neck, and there was a long line connecting it to the speaker. From another place, a group of men and women floated up. Some wore loose dresses, some wore tight short shirts, some held wine glasses, some held swords, and some held fruit platters. It was a very mixed scene. Worldly affairs' laughable infatuation is the most boring, supercilious, alright. The voice came from the woman on the stage as the audience watched. Each and every one of them widened their eyes and opened their mouths. Even the children didn't shout blindly. This woman was really too beautiful. That figure, that voice, and that gaze. They couldn't see clearly. It was too far away. While the people were marveling at the performer's beauty, they were also conquered by the comfortable tune and lyrics. Zhang Xiaobao could understand the feelings of the people. If this wasn't a pentatonic mode, the people might feel uncomfortable and have to listen a few more times to get used to it. Now that it was a silent mode, and with a special arrangement, it was refreshing. Zhang Xiaobao knew that people who listened to this song for the first time would be attracted. After all, those who weren't attracted were in the minority. There was no other way. You couldn't let everyone admire you. The only thing you needed to do was to put more effort into the people who admired you. Wang Wan had also specially practiced this kind of spinning stage control. She practiced it in her own courtyard. The difference was that the stage was spinning, and now she was the one spinning. She continued to sing. When I wake up, I smile to people. In my dreams, I forget, sigh. It's too early. The next life is hard to predict. Love and hate are written off. To drink and sing. I only wish to be happy until I'm old. At this moment, the drums suddenly played a small continuo, and then the hanging cymbals, the stepping cymbals, and the ground drums sounded one after another. Then, no matter how cold the wind is, I don't want to run away. No matter how beautiful the flowers are, I don't want them. Let me float. Wang Wan sang the first part of Endure Me Float, with a strong sense of rhythm. When it hooked people's hearts, the 4 words, Allow me float, accompanied by the swaying of her body like a willow, expressing the meaning of this sentence incisively and vividly. This kind of fast rhythm suddenly turned into a soft and tenacious effect, conquering everyone in an instant. Some people in the audience held their breaths, some clenched their fists, and some people's legs were trembling. Just as these 4 soft and tenacious words were sung, without waiting for others to breathe a sigh of relief, Wang Wan sang again. The higher the sky, the smaller the heart. Don't ask how much karma. Alone drunk today cry, tomorrow laugh. Don't ask for anyone to understand. Proud, singing, dancing, long night, finding happiness. Interlude. The people who were listening to the song were stunned. This song was not only soft and tenacious, but also had a strong sense of rhythm. The dance was the same. Every rotation, every flutter, every pause, every stretch of the body, they all matched the song perfectly. It was originally a song sung by a woman, but for some reason, the people who listened to it felt a lot of emotions in their hearts. There was the realization of life, the pursuit of life, the coldness of the long night, and the noise and prosperity in their eyes at this moment. It was like nostalgia, reluctance, tenderness, and determination. No matter what, they could not imagine how a song could contain so many emotions. Good, good, good. Cheers rang out, causing the surrounding air to vibrate incessantly. Some people even jumped and jumped, trying to find a way to vent the emotions in their hearts. When the song reached the climax again, Wang Wan suddenly lifted the veil on her face and flung it out, revealing her beautiful face with cherry lips and a jade nose. She continued to sing, "The wind is cold." Those who were not far away were all stunned when they saw the face behind the veil. Then they went crazy and shouted in a mess. "Cuckoo, it's Cuckoo. She's singing Cuckoo. Cuckoo is singing up there." When they shouted, those who were far away also looked carefully and wanted to squeeze forward. They vaguely saw that others were shouting Cuckoo, so they also thought that it was Cuckoo. Because there were people and stools in front of them, they could not squeeze forward, so they shouted along. Those who had good memories even sang along. After the song ended, Wang Wan's figure disappeared from the stage. The people who were watching the performance shouted and clapped crazily again. They felt that if they did not see it with their own eyes, they would not believe that the person who sang for them was Cuckoo. What kind of joke was this? How could Cuckoo go up to sing, and sing so well? If she was not crazy, then the world was crazy. Everyone was excited and happy, but at the same time they were shocked. Cuckoo could sing so well. Who said that she only knew how to fight? Alright, thank you for your applause. Xiao Hongchen's song was indeed very good. Of course, it was mainly because the singer sang it well. I did not introduce it before the song, but I believe that I do not need to introduce it after the song. Everyone should already know. That's right, the singer of Xiao Hongchen's song is my goddess Cuckoo. Then just like the song just now, the song is singing, the dance is dancing, the night is long and unknowingly, the search for happiness. Cuckoo sang the first song, so that we can continue to enjoy the performance tonight. The next song is a solo on the horsehead zither. Please let us. Alright, you can come up by yourself. I will not introduce you. The host returned to the stage at the right time and said to the audience. He did not introduce the person who played the horsehead zither, because there was no need. This person was also from the intelligence department and was disguised. In the future, he would not perform for no reason unless it was necessary. This person did not have any accompaniment, only a horsehead zither. The most pure music. He took the microphone, adjusted it, and lowered his head to speak. Actually, I am very unwilling to be the second to come up. This would be a very sad thing for me. When Cuckoo finished singing, your hearts had already flown away with her. I discussed it with the two brats behind me. I said that you should switch with me. After all, you are performing a language show, which is different from the previous song. Perhaps you can win back some of the audience's hearts. For this reason, I was even willing to treat them to a big meal, such as hot pot. However, I was mercilessly rejected by them. I found that they are very smart as I am. This is because it is impossible to eat hot pot outside in the inner courtyard, and eating at home is free. Ha 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 ha. There was another burst of laughter. Some people were quick-witted and immediately understood that the person who played the horsehead zither was also very capable. If he did not say a few words to amuse the audience and just started playing the zither, it would really be like what he said. No one was listening attentively. Everyone was thinking about Cuckoo's Xiao Hongchen. Why don't I stop playing the zither? I will perform a stand-up comedy for everyone. When everyone is done laughing, I will see what those two behind me will do. There was another burst of laughter in the audience. Although he said that, he still had to perform the horsehead zither. After testing the notes, he began to play. His level was also very high. The audience sat back down and listened attentively, enjoying the moment of joy. This is really fun. While Xiaobei was waiting for her brother to make something to eat, she looked at the person on the stage and said, "Is he a professional performer?" "No, he's from the intelligence team." Zhang Xiaobao whispered to his sister. His hands did not stop moving. He was currently peeling the shell of the prawn rake. He used a small knife to cut along the edges, opened the shell, and took out the meat inside. He placed it on a deep plate. After placing a dozen or so prawns, he scooped up the hot soup from the malatang utensil and poured it over the meat. After pouring it over the meat, he poured the soup away from the plate and poured it over again. After doing this a few times, the meat would be cooked. Xiaobei waited patiently. She sniffed and smelled the soup. She nodded and said, "The people in our intelligence department are indeed very good. Especially after the incident in Jiangnan society, they usually train harder. I have to train harder in the future and show my professionalism. Isn't that right, brother? No need. If you're tired, just rest. You're still young. You have time to learn slowly." Zhang Xiaobao was afraid that if he said the right thing, his sister would compete with diplomacy all day from tonight onwards. In the end, she would confuse him. While they were talking, the prawn rake meat was cooked. Zhang Xiaobao specially prepared a small dish of sesame paste, sesame oil, soy sauce and oyster sauce. Whoever wanted to eat could dip it in. "Come and eat." Xiaobei called the 8 people watching the performance. She first used a stick as a pair of chopsticks to pick up a piece of meat. She shook it in the sauce and carefully brought it to her mouth. She opened her mouth and bit into it. She nodded as she ate, making vague sounds of saying that it was delicious. The other 8 kids came over and surrounded the plate to eat. After eating a piece of meat, Xiaobei asked, "Brother, when are you going to sing your song? I'm sure you'll be able to control the audience." "I don't know. It depends on the situation. Anytime. What's the matter?" Zhang Xiaobao was talking to his sister when an intelligence agent came over from the side. He signaled to Zhang Xiaobao with his eyes that he had something to say. The intelligence agent looked around warily. When he saw that there were no outsiders, he lowered his voice and said, "The duo man that Shui Yin led the team to capture has confessed. He said that the mission of the 231 people here is to capture the Tang people. It's best if they're real Tang people with status, such as officials and merchants. However, they didn't expect the Tang people to act so quickly. They captured them before they could do anything. He said that there are 3 groups of people. One group is them, and the other group is the people at the border who are hired to carry the logs. What about the last group? Zhang Xiaobao knew that the 3rd group was the most important. He had his eyes on the group at the border. He believed that good news would come soon. The last group has more people and many ships. They're traveling by sea and bypassing Luzhou's armed ships and the lighthouse. They're heading to Hangzhou to capture people. They said that there are more people with status in Hangzhou compared to other coastal areas. It's safer there, the intelligence agent said. Zhang Xiaobao thought about it for a moment before he shook his head. Tell Cuckoo to come back quickly. Don't stay there and chat with the others. Prepare the horses. I'll ask Cuckoo personally. When Wang Wan returned and looked at Zhang Xiaobao in confusion, Zhang Xiaobao said to her, "We're not the only ones who know how to land and fight. Their target is Hangzhou. They're quite smart." Wang Wan blinked and scoffed. "I'm worried that they'll die at sea when they go around the lighthouse and our armed ships. Let's go back and ask them." Chapter 1246. 1,000 years. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your support. Time is redundant, riding the long river road. You are not abandoned, the heart is touched. But with 1,000 days of memories, the eyes are full of fog. For what reason? Acquaintances are often accompanied by deep feelings. Spring comes, the swallow searches for its home. The pen moves, no words of bitterness. The country speaks of the great Tang, still flying egrets. Do you remember? The sun warms the grain soil. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan left on horseback. Whether or not they could come back at night to sing ocean's laughter would depend on the results of the interrogation. Without his brother to help him get the meat from the prawn rake, Xiaobei did not let the others busy and changed to eat other things. If there were not so many people around, and he was afraid that the smoke from the barbecue would suffocate others, Xiaobei would have asked someone to bring a barbecue rack and then cut the beef into large pieces and barbecue it. He ate to his heart's content, and 2 skewers were enough to fill him up. In the future, we will also arrange for performances. If there is a chance, we will go up and perform, Xiaobei said to Xiao Yuan, who was scalding mushrooms. Xiao Yuan nodded indifferently. Okay, you can do whatever you want. With you around, we won't have to worry about being idle. Being busy can make people feel fulfilled. Give me a skewer too. I want the reticulated mushroom one. Don't put it among the spicy ones. I want to try it. Xiaobei held a big prawn in his hand and glanced at Xiao Yuan. After he finished speaking, he continued to watch the performance on the stage. I feel that you are not fulfilling enough now. You let me do it, and you watch the performance. Appreciating art itself is a kind of fulfillment. Look, the skit about selling fake goods is so good. Don't watch it. Listen and look at the mushrooms. Xiaobei continued eating. Xiaobei, why did you sell us fake goods? Xiaobei had just finished speaking when a young girl's voice came from beside him. The children turned their heads to look and saw a little girl about their age standing there, accompanied by a woman with an embarrassed expression. Xiaobei went to check on the guards first. Seeing that the guards did not respond, he knew that the 2 of them could come in, so they were not a threat to him. Only then did he recall the young girl's words and asked in confusion, "Fake goods? Where are they from?" "They are from Baby Candy House." "Look, are they broken?" The little girl stretched out her hand and revealed a small toy car in her palm. It was very small, and the little girl had no problem placing 4 of them side by side. Xiaobei reached out and took it. He placed it in front of his eyes and carefully examined it. The small car was made of wood and had 4 smaller wheels that could be turned. The bottom of the car was engraved with 2 cartoon characters that read Baby. The front of the car was split open. It's true. Baby, the candy house and candy came with the toy car. Look, there's a word on the bottom. Baby. Xiaobei proved to the little girl. Then why is the front of the car cracked? The little girl didn't care about Xiaobei's identity for the sake of the toy. Xiaobei was at a loss and frowned. How would I know? There are various ways to break the wooden cart, such as dropping it, smashing it with a hammer, or jumping up and stepping on it. No, it's just a normal wheel. When I let go, it's my younger brother's car. As I was playing with it, I suddenly pushed it forward and let go. It hit the wall and broke. The quality is not good. Isn't it a fake? The little girl made a gesture of playing with a small car. Xiaobei widened his eyes for a while and blinked twice. How can this be played with? A small car is something that looks good. You can hold it in your hand and put it on the ground to let it run. Of course, it will break when it hits the wall. The small car is a gift. When you buy cakes and candy, you don't give them. Only children on their birthdays will give them things. The small car should be a set of 4. If one is broken, there are still 3 good ones. Speaking of cakes, Xiaobei sighed again. There were no cakes to sell now. He had to wait for his brother and sister to say that there was still a lot of food in the house before he could sell the cakes again. What he lost was all money. The little girl was at a loss for words. The gift was free. It seemed to be a very unreasonable thing to find someone to reason with if a free gift was broken. Look, I told you not to come, but you insisted. It's just a wooden thing. Later, I'll ask your third uncle to make a few more for you. Your third uncle is the best at carpentry. The woman who led the little girl over smiled at Xiaobei, and the others embarrassedly, and reprimanded her daughter. No. The little girl was obviously unhappy. What does a carpenter's small car have to do with a baby candy house? Uncle, do you dare to carve the same word baby on the bottom? The woman shook her head. No one dared to imitate it like that. The little girl looked worried. She looked at Xiaobei and asked unwillingly, the gift didn't say that you can't play with it like that. Think about it. Who doesn't want to send the car far away when they play with it? Right? It's good to put some lead in front. My brother is young. If you let him play with it, he will want the car to run far away. Lead won't do. Xiaobei was also worried. He shook the wooden car and said, if it's lead, children will be poisoned when they put it in their mouths. You're right. The gift must also reflect the quality of the baby candy house. The more you give, the better it has to be. In the future, there will be a ring of rubber around the car. There's no need to be afraid of collision. If it breaks, it means that the force is too strong. I don't have a small car with me. Tomorrow, you have time to go to the baby candy house in the city. Take the broken car and ask them to replace it for you. Let your brother make do with it first. When the car with the rubber ring is out, the baby candy house will publish a message on the newspaper and put it on the second page. When you see it, you can take your car to change it, okay? After that, Xiaobei added, but we won't take care of your travel expenses. Unless it's a big item, the kind that requires a carriage and animals to pull it. The little girl was very surprised. She didn't expect such a small thing to be published in the newspaper. She immediately regretted coming and whispered, there's no need. There's no need to spend so much effort on a gift. You're not the only one with a car. There are others. Our family represents the highest quality of the Tang Empire. If we don't do it, we'll lose more than just the cost. We're standing here. All the merchants of the Tang Empire have to look up to us. We'll deal with whoever dares to cheat and cut corners. Xiaobei explained his purpose to the little girl. Seeing the little girl's puzzled expression, he shook his head and gave up the idea of explaining to her. He said, since you're here, let's eat together. We can't finish it anyway. My Yi doesn't eat. She hates the smell. The woman said, she doesn't even touch fish at home. Are you allergic? Xiaobei was concerned. The little girl and the woman shook their heads. Then I know. Do you want to eat bean products? Xiaobei asked again. Yes, I want to eat dried tofu. The little girl stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. She was probably attracted by the smell of the malatang. Xiaobei immediately arranged for people to make some dried tofu skewers and invited the little girl to eat together. As for the woman, she had just eaten a box meal and couldn't squeeze with the children. Only the 9 little guys were eating here. The dried tofu was cooked very quickly. It could be eaten after a few dips in the soup. After introducing the chili oil to the little girl, the 9 little guys began to watch the little girl eat. They also looked at each other. The little girl happily ate 2 skewers. Suddenly, she looked up and saw that she was surrounded. Her face immediately turned red and she whispered, it's delicious. You guys eat. The 9 little guys tacitly turned around to get the seafood. Xiaobei also took the mushrooms. He didn't eat them, and put them on the little girl's plate. There were 5 mushrooms on a skewer. The little girl ate one, and her eyebrows almost flew up. She nodded vigorously and made a whining sound. It seemed that she found it delicious. Xiao Bei ate a mouthful of squid, and looked at the little girl. Let me tell you a story. Okay. The little girl was very happy. She slowed down her eating speed and stared at Xiao Bei, waiting for him to tell the story. There was a child who was 8 years old this year. He lived by the sea. The sea was blue and couldn't see the end of it. In the distance, it seemed to be connected to the sky. There were white seagulls flying. As for this child, he had 2 rabbits and already had 6 baby rabbits. He had to drink milk before they could grow. One day, the child came home from school and found that the big rabbits were gone. If the big rabbits were gone, the little rabbits would starve to death. The child was anxious and looked for them. He went to the yard and couldn't find them. He went to the barn and still couldn't find them. Where did the rabbits go? Xiao Bei stopped talking and tilted his head as if he was thinking about something. The little girl stopped eating and also thought about it. Her eyes were full of expectation. The child thought, did the rabbits go to the beach? So he ran towards the beach. When he reached the beach, he suddenly became happy. The rabbits were really there. They were playing with the little crabs on the beach. So, the child ran over to take a look and played with them. When he found that it was late, he wanted to bring the rabbits home to feed the baby rabbits, right? Xiao Bei paused and told the story like a stream of water to fool the little girl. The other party didn't care. The little girl nodded. But suddenly, a sea monster with long fangs rushed out of the sea towards the rabbits and the child. It wanted to eat them. The child was weak and couldn't beat the sea monster. He was very anxious. What should he do? What should he do? Was he going to be eaten? Xiao Bei shook his head anxiously. He frowned and opened his mouth. The little girl clenched her fists and looked very engrossed. At this critical and dangerous moment, the child thought of what the adults said. They said that eating seafood, fish, prawns, and other things in the water could make people smarter and stronger. The little crabs seemed to know about this too. They had already helped the child drag a squid out of the sea. It's the squid I'm eating now. It's called the squid mouth, where the squid mouth is. Xiao Bei stopped and ate a squid mouth. He gestured to Yu. The child immediately dragged the little crabs over, and hesitated to take a bite. It happened to bite the squid mouth. He chewed and swallowed it. Then he realized that he had become smarter and stronger. The sea monster that rushed over didn't have legs. In an instant the child thought of a solution. With the help of the rabbits and the little crabs, he dug a big hole on the beach. When the sea monster rushed up, they hid and the sea monster fell into the hole. The sea monster didn't have legs. It wanted to come up but couldn't. The child then filled the hole with sand, and the sea monster died below. When he returned home, the child liked to eat seafood and fish in the water very much. He became smarter and his body became better and better. Many children asked why, but the child didn't tell others. He wanted to become powerful by himself. Most importantly, the child realized that seafood and fish were very delicious. After Xiao Bei finished, he let out a long breath. He was tired. The little girl Yu also let out a long breath. She was scared. Eat. You eat your dried tofu and mushrooms. I'll eat my squid mouth. It's delicious. It's better than eating soft candy. Xiao Bei ate 2 squid mouths at once and smacked his lips hard. Yu's mouth moved as well. She asked hesitantly, Isn't it fishy? If you think about fishy, then everything is fishy. If you think about freshness, seafood and fish are very fresh. If you don't believe me, try it. Xiao Yuan, bring a skewer of squid mouth over. Xiao Bei instructed Xiao Yuan. When Xiao Yuan brought a skewer of squid mouth soup to the little girl's plate, Yu carefully picked it up and bit off a squid mouth. She chewed hard. After a while, she ate it and felt that it was very amazing. She said, It's really delicious. It's not fishy at all. Then she ate 2 in a row. She turned to her mother and said, Mother, I want to eat fish in the future. I'll become very smart and powerful. You can also become beautiful, Xiao Bei added. He forgot to mention it just now. Okay. Mother will make fish for Yu to eat in the future. The woman wiped her tears and said to her daughter. At this moment, She really understood how amazing Xiaobei and the others were. They were children of the same age, but they could tell stories to their children to make them like eating fish. Who would have thought of such a good idea? The little girl you didn't think about the profound meaning behind it. She ate the dried tofu and mushrooms on her plate as fast as she could. Then she focused on the seafood. She stuffed abalone, squid, and sea cucumber into her mouth until she was full. The woman took Yu, who was rubbing her stomach, and said goodbye to Xiaobei and the others. Xiaobei wiped the sweat on his forehead. I'm so tired. Is it difficult to educate a child? Why did you have to pull her in front of me to tell stories? Xiao Yuan also wiped his sweat. There are many children in Tang dynasty who are like Yu. They don't like to eat this and that. We can't tell everyone the story once. We need more people to work hard. Yes. Xiaobei nodded helplessly. The person who had been serving them saw that the little ones were in a dilemma. He thought for a while. And when he passed the sesame oil to Xiaobei, he said, I don't know if young master Xiao Bao can come back in time to perform. He's really busy with too many things. Sometimes he has to do it himself. And sometimes he has to guide the people through the newspapers. Many things that the people don't understand can only be understood by reading the newspapers. Fortunately, there are newspapers and the price is cheap. He almost doesn't need to pay for it himself. In the end, when the newspapers are sold, the money from the newspaper subscriptions will come back to him. The costs will be borne by the merchants who advertise. After he finished speaking, he turned around and sat back down, waiting for the little one's instructions. The eyes of the 9 little ones lit up. They looked at each other and were very excited. That's right. Brother can use the newspaper to tell the people things, so can we. We publish our own newspaper in the Precious Candy House. It's specially for the children to read. We tell stories in it. Those who don't like to eat vegetables have special stories. Those who don't like to eat fatty meat also have special stories. We give it to the children for free. The cost of printing and editing will be borne by the merchants who are involved with the children. We will advertise for them. If they are capable enough, they can monopolize the plot of a certain story in Tang Dynasty. We can even name the food in the story after the name of their product to help promote their sales. For example, there are 100,000 children in Tang Dynasty who don't like to eat fish. After advertising they like fish, then the number of fish sold will be additional to the number they sold before, right? Let's do it this way. Xiaobei waved his fist, looking like he was going to do something big. The other 8 children also showed their support with their expressions. After confirming the matter, they were suddenly stunned. At the same time, they turned to look at the inner courtyard that had just passed the sesame oil to Xiaobei. Xiao Yuan took a deep breath and said, My family's inner courtyard is 1 in a million. I thought that Xiaobei's calmness when telling the children stories to let you eat fish was very impressive. However, the people around us are silent. The inner courtyard just now smiled modestly and didn't say anything. Su Ilong, who had been following Xiaobei and the rest, was stunned at the back. At this moment, he felt that he had seen too many incredible things and learned too much. He understood too much about the deep foundation of the Zhang family and Wang family. There were too many things Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan didn't know what their younger brothers and sisters did after they left. After rushing for a while, the 2 of them came to the place where the polycannibals were locked up. After another round of interrogation, the result was the same as before. There were 231 polycannibals. It was impossible to maintain unity and not confess. As long as they pried open one person's mouth, the others would definitely not be able to hold on. Don't let them die. Give some simple treatment to those who were executed before. With more than 230 people, we can build a long section of railway. Before Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan left the interrogation place, they asked about the polycannibals. Wang Wan wasn't interested in this. Instead, she said with relief, It's fine as long as there are no other schemes. If we really send people to patrol the coast, they can come around and smoothly. We can directly send people to wait at a place where they can go ashore in Hangzhou. If the ship is damaged at sea, it will be dangerous for them to find a place to dock. I'm afraid that they will either die at sea or dock at Xinyuan Island, which is Luzon Island. They will compete with the local aborigines for resources. In the end, they will either turn the locals into believers, or they will become locals. Zhang Xiaobao said as if he was telling a joke. He didn't think that the polycannibals would take such measures to deal with the war. At the same time, he found that he and Cuckoo had a weakness. They cared too much about the safety and happiness of the Tang people. But they couldn't change it. The imperial court cared about the people, so the people supported the country. If the people were disappointed again and again, even if they didn't dare to rebel because of the military suppression, as long as there were other factors that made the country unstable, the people would be happy to add fuel to the fire and make things worse. Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao knew the weakness, but they couldn't change it. Looking to the west, she said, "Send more people to patrol the land. The border is too long." The long border on land was more difficult than on the sea. Fortunately, they could see very far on the sea. On the land there were forests and valleys. Who knew where the enemy would come from? "Why don't we occupy the entire Eurasian continent? The land will be safe," Zhang Xiaobao suggested. "What about the sea? You can just say to occupy the whole world. Then we can fight against the alien enemies together." Wang Wan rolled her eyes at Zhang Xiaobao. "That's fine. At that time, it will be the global village. The people of various places on Earth will be distributed according to their needs. Our Tang Empire will be in charge of researching the advanced technology, and other places will be in charge of processing and providing the raw materials. They don't need to research. If they do, it will be called a waste of resources." Zhang Xiaobao followed along, not blushing at all. "Do you think others are stupid? Do you think there are few stupid people? Many of the elites in China think so. There are even some in the ruling class. Do you think we should help build railways in other countries?" Wang Wan interrupted Zhang Xiaobao and asked. "Use it. It's like when Japan invaded China. If we don't build railways, we can't transport things. And it's not easy to mobilize troops. In that case, we should build factories for them. That's fine. Many polluting enterprises will be built. Look at our Tang Empire. The pollution is very serious now. In order to speed up the progress, small factories are built. In the future, we will have to heal this scar. Fortunately, we have moved away the people around the factories. Looking at the colorful smoke coming out of the factories, because of the technical limitations, it would be a lie to say that I don't feel bad." Zhang Xiaobao sounded like he was in a difficult position. Wang Wan was also troubled for a while, but she immediately stopped thinking about the pollution. Although the pollution caused by the creation of constant profits now required 5 or even 10 strings of coins to be reformed in the future, the accounts were not calculated like that. Now that constant profits were generated, this constant money brought about the improvement of technology. Moreover, when the time came for the Reformation, it would have already generated hundreds or thousands of strings of coins. The main problem was whether a small portion of the profits would be used for the Reformation. If the money used for the Reformation was not used for the Reformation, but to create more profits, that would be troublesome. According to the greed of human nature, there was a 99% chance that they would do so. Unless it was not only the lives of others that were threatened, but also his own life, then he would be willing to reform the pollution. "Let's go. We'll go back and sleep for a while first, then we'll go to the performance. I wonder if the smart and bold people of Tang Empire have made preparations for the small cluster of agriculture and handicrafts." After saying that, Zhang Xiaobao walked to the bedroom first. "I guarantee it. There will definitely be news in 2 days." Wang Wan followed. Chapter 1247. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan rested, saying that they would wake up later to participate in the performance. But in the end, they slept until dawn the next day. Zhang Xiaobao did not sing a laugh in the sea. When he got up, he stretched comfortably, saying that good songs should not be played all at once, but one by one. Wang Wan was also very tired. For the past few days, she and Zhang Xiaobao had been giving everyone the feeling that they were at ease, as if they did not care about the war. Only they knew that what they were most afraid of was that when the artillery was fired, A message would come from somewhere saying that they had been schemed against by the enemy. For example, when crossing a snowy mountain, there would be people shouting in groups, which would cause an avalanche or something. For example, when marching on the green and yellow grassland, they would suddenly find that the surroundings were on fire. For example, when the artillery passed by a certain area, countless fireworks buried by someone suddenly exploded. In any case, there were many methods in asymmetrical warfare, and they were usually very useful. Although they could not achieve a strategic victory, it was not a problem to reap the lives of some people. The two of them believed that if they were the ones commanding the multi-eater, they would definitely be able to trap the Tang army there, after paying a certain price of lives, and keep losing people. Since the method was thought of by people who could guarantee that there was not a particularly smart and lucky person among the multi-eater, when the time came, they would eat 500 Tang soldiers first, and then the Tang would basically lose 500 family members. War is really too cruel. At the cost of people's lives, they get a little bit of resources that are not equal to their lives. I really hope that the world is peaceful and there is no war. Zhang Xiaobao said to Wang Wan when he helped her to write the general tactical arrangements she had made for various places. Wang Wan did not say anything. She was still calculating the distance on the map and looking through the local climate, geographical environment, and other information collected. Zhang Xiaobao did not expect Wang Wan to cooperate with him, so he continued. But if there is no war, then the premise is that people must lose the mind to compare with each other. A peaceful wolf pack would never be able to survive. Without competition, humans would also not be able to develop. Humans, through the struggle, became the overlords of the world. Then, humans discovered that the world was only a small part of it. Outside the atmosphere were countless stars and unknown things. One day, the ultimate killer from beyond the heavens would descend upon Earth. Thus, humans continued to develop through the struggle. Wang Wan still didn't say anything. Instead, she handed 2 pieces of paper containing the information to Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao looked at it and cursed. "Damn, you're so smart." After thinking for a while, he said, "All right, I take back what I just said on behalf of humanity. It has nothing to do with world peace. The tree wants to be still, but the wind won't stop. Just like what we had in the beginning, we just wanted to make our family more comfortable. Tell me, is it wrong to increase production in the fields? Was it wrong to open a shop to make money? What's wrong with getting some winter cucumbers? You're not wrong. You're wrong because you have it, but others don't. We can only think of ways to protect our own interests. In the end, we protect and protect and protect until we become like this. Who can we blame?" "All right, don't make it sound so dignified. Do you think I don't know you?" Wang Wan finally couldn't help but speak. Zhang Xiaobao smiled shyly. "Haha, thank you. It's enough to have a confidant in life. Look, it says that the cannibals actually developed our fireworks and gunpowder and started to mass produce them. There have been several explosions in the workshops. I don't object to them making fireworks. It's just entertainment. But why do they put a large amount of fireworks and gunpowder in the stones with holes? Do they lack the paper to make fireworks? It's obvious that from the moment Tang Empire started to have all kinds of good things, those people from other countries have been jealous. If we give away our technology for free, we might be able to achieve a period of peace. Then we will continue to research and give them technology. Otherwise, they will think about us. When they don't have technology, they will want to steal technology. Now that they have some technology, they will want to use this technology to steal more technology. Peace is never something that can be bought by giving in. Hubby, what are you trying to say?" Wang Wan raised her head and asked. She really couldn't understand. What was Zhang Xiaobao's purpose for saying so much at this time? Could it be that he regretted attacking others and was afraid that he couldn't persevere, so he found an excuse for himself? What excuse did you need to fight a war? Comfort yourself. There was no need. They just wanted to bully you. They just wanted to rob you. They weren't willing to be enslaved. If you resisted, they would beat you. It was the same principle as lions eating deer and horses. Thinking of this, Wang Wan suddenly became worried. She was afraid that Zhang Xiaobao would start to waver in his determination to fight. If he didn't invade others and gave up halfway, the cannibals would definitely not be grateful. Instead, they would strengthen their military and continue to look for opportunities to attack. Zhang Xiaobao showed a compassionate expression and said to Wang Wan, "What I want to say is that most of the people we are fighting now are the main force in front of the cannibals, the real main force. They are almost all the old soldiers that we used to fight against the enemy when we were training. They are very cunning. Once we fight, they know how to disperse and then regroup. They always stay in places that make our army uncomfortable. Why don't we send a captured cannibals back and tell them that we won't fight anymore and that there is peace? However, our army can't appear in certain areas, and they can't appear in certain areas either. After setting the area, we can roughly determine where they are gathering. We will send the hot air balloon troops over and take advantage of a windless night to quietly surround them. At daybreak, the ground troops will launch a general attack and kill their veterans." Wang Wan stared at Zhang Xiaobao and suddenly smiled. She said, "Very good. You are still the Xiaobao I know. If one day you become kind, I will be scared to death." "Thank you." Zhang Xiaobao was very happy that his idea was accepted. 5 days later, the war was still going on. Shui Yun's family flew back and forth and finally delivered all the salt tickets and some small things to their destination. They returned to the restaurant to have a big meal and rest. Seeing that Shui Yun's family had obviously lost some weight, Xiaobei and the others felt distressed. They specially had people kill 2 lambs that were specially used to roast whole lambs and fed them to the family. When the telegram was sent to the capital, Li Longji specially made Shui Yun's family a high-ranking official and promoted him to the 4th rank. This was because Shui Yun, who was getting smarter, could be used as a strategic weapon. For example, he could take a bomb and drop it on the enemy's headquarters. Not only could he do it, but he had done it before. On the way back, he took a detour and blew up the headquarters of a 4,000-man camp. The telegram was sent back first, saying that they could increase the intensity of the attack and give Shui Yun credit for the loss of command. When Li Longji heard the news, he praised Shui Yun fiercely in the court, saying that he could take the head of the enemy's general as easily as taking something out of his pocket. He could complete a fixed-point kill from thousands of miles away. The court officials didn't believe that Shui Yun could target someone and kill them. At most, he would blow up the enemy's biggest tent. However, as officials of the same court, they couldn't say anything bad about Shui Yun. After all, he was just an animal. If they argued with an animal, they should be careful that the person who raised the animal would argue with them later. Why haven't I heard of this before? If Shui Yun can fly steadily, and we can harden our hearts, find a child who knows how to shoot and fly over with a gun, we can kill a lot of people. The deterrent effect is very strong. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan deliberately went to see Shui Yun's family. When they returned to the house, they sighed. "Why not? We've always had them. We train eagles, dogs, elephants, dolphins and other animals to help humans hunt and fight. What's so strange about that? Shui Yun is just a little smarter, and the chances of him getting albinism are lower than his. What our great Tang owes him is nothing more than some meat and cotton, but we've gained a lot from him. If you treat him better, he'll be dead set on you. He's stronger than others." Wang Wan recalled something and said with a slightly sad tone. Zhang Xiaobao also thought of that matter and sighed. "Sigh. Life is like this. You should think from another perspective. If human nature isn't complicated, wouldn't it be too boring to live as a member of society? When did I say that human nature isn't allowed to be complicated? I'm saying that what he did was really infuriating. If he can't be evaluated as a craftsman, then he should go to a free training place to learn. During the training, the imperial court gave him some living expenses enough to eat. His 2 children don't need to be raised by him. The imperial court pays for their meals, clothes, and accommodation. We're no different from Germany now. He actually injured his wife, kidnapped his 2 children, and extorted them from the local government. He wants a job with high wages, power, and freedom. What a fool's dream." Wang Wan talked about this matter. In fact, it was a person who found his own career after Zhang Xiaobao issued the 12 national policies. But the reality was that there was no such thing as a career, only a salary. If he went to the local government, the government would arrange work for him. If he didn't know how to do it, he would train him first. But this person felt that it was too tiring to do that. First, he wanted people to give him money for free, saying that the national welfare was so good that it didn't make a difference. Then, seeing that the government didn't agree, he kidnapped his children. He didn't care about his children, but the government did. Hence, while they were negotiating, they sent a sniper and shot him down. He never got up again. The two children lost their father because of this. This was a grain of sand washed by the tide of social development, but it was very touching. Was it right or wrong to increase the welfare of the country? There was an intense debate in the imperial court. Some people felt that the 12 national policies were artificially widening the gap between the rich and poor, intensifying the competition and comparison between the villagers in small areas. That was why such a thing happened. In the long run, the country would no longer be a country. Some officials felt that this matter existed alone. They would first observe, and if it happened a few more times, they would adjust the national policies. There were also people who criticized Zhang Xiaobao's strategy for not doing the right thing. After creating chaos in Great Tang, he didn't immediately fix it, and instead, ignored it and treated it coldly. Li Longji was annoyed by the noise, and sent a telegram to Zhang Xiaobao, asking him what he should do. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan felt depressed. Who was the one who was so free to magnify a small problem? Wouldn't such a thing happen if the country didn't develop? That's right. According to historical records, there were very few people who were sentenced to death in Great Tang every year. Moreover, it was said that Li Longji would personally ask the other party if they felt that their death was unjust. However, that wasn't the case. Historical records stated that many punishments didn't go through the government and were directly dealt with by the local clans. Furthermore, this was also a period of land annexation, so how could the gap between the rich and poor be small? The officials were all bored and felt that the government was running smoothly. That's why they targeted us. Did they see how far we were from the capital? They were waiting for us to return. Zhang Xiaobao said mockingly, I feel that it's also your fault. Who asked you to take out the 12 national policies? At the very least, that person was executed because of your influence. What about your follow-up actions? Wang Wan argued. Wait, let's wait for another 2 days. I don't believe that the people of Great Tang will die in just a few days, Zhang Xiaobao said gloomily. Chapter 1248. Seeing Zhang Xiaobao's sullen look, Wang Wan couldn't help but laugh. Hubby, okay. Others don't understand you, but I do. You're a good person who loves this nation the most in the world. You have the talent to cheat others, but you never do anything to your own people. You could have obtained more money, but after you stabilized the Tang Empire's financial situation, you let go and nurtured other businessmen. You were originally an unruly person, but when faced with the accusations of the Tang people, you chose to endure. You had countless reasons and excuses to explain clearly, but you still chose to remain silent. Some people may think that you're weak, but in my eyes, you're a real man. Whether you're weak or not, ask the original Tubo people, ask the Turks, ask the Xinhua people, ask the Japanese people, ask the north of Hebei province, which is the 3 northeastern provinces, and they will give a fair answer. In fact, Wang Wan was not worried that Zhang Xiaobao would lose confidence and stop using his abilities for the Tang Empire, because she believed that as long as Zhang Xiaobao saw the children of the Tang Empire, he would definitely be firm in his confidence. That Grandpa Dean had already gone deep into his soul. Speaking of which, whether it was China in the past or the current Tang Empire, they should all thank such an ordinary and great old man. He used his life to write a legend that followed the trajectory of the track. Zhang Xiaobao suddenly hugged Wang Wan and kissed her. As if he had taken advantage of her, he said, You should support me. You're my wife. If you don't support me, who will you support? Yes, you're my God. God, how did I meet you? Wang Wan replied with a smile. Same, you're also my God. It's so mushy. Don't pinch me. I hate women pinching men, especially on the ribs. I can't use any strength. Look, I'll analyze it for you. Zhang Xiaobao grabbed Wang Wan's hand and said, "Oh, there's a talk." Wang Wan asked cooperatively, "It's an analysis." Look, yes, I admit that the 12 national policies I took out will cause social unrest. But that's because society is already on the brink of unrest. Ever since we started suggesting that the imperial court help raise children and take care of pregnant women, that sum of money was the source of unrest. Do you agree that the welfare of society can never exceed the minimum average income of society? Otherwise, there would be a deficit, and it would not be a deficit in the development process. A deficit in development could bring about future profits, and a deficit in welfare would not only increase consumption, but also disguised inflation. So why do I insist on giving a lot of benefits to pregnant babies? One reason was that I needed a large number of people, and the other reason was that the Agrarian Technology Research Department already had technology that could be applied in daily life. This is the so-called civilian technology. Actually, I have always put civilian and military together. I'm not afraid of others stealing from the people of Great Tang. Of the surrounding countries, other than Japan, I'm concerned about their intelligence. Even if I give them technology, they won't be able to learn it. They're all too stupid. Of course, Russia is still possible. But is there a Russia now? Our people in Hubei province have been moving there for construction and exploration. I won't give them a chance to establish a country, right? Zhang Xiaobao said a lot, not only for Wang Wan, but also for himself. He was very strong in front of outsiders, but when facing Wang Wan, he showed his weak side. This was a kind of trust for his partner, a kind of dependence. Therefore, when many officials had too many people to rely on, they were reported by others. The officials who were strong and calculative in front of the public also needed a harbor for their souls. If they had too many harbors, they would not be able to take care of them when distributing resources. Therefore, internal wars became the source of division. Wang Wan also needed a harbor. In this world, she was no different from Zhang Xiaobao. She couldn't find a partner by relying on local materials. Otherwise, she would always be lonely in her heart. Of course, Wang Wan said to Zhang Xiaobao more than once that if the child lying next to her was the person who held the child hostage, she would find a way to kill him. She would rather be lonely than compromise with that kind of person. Whether it was the gap in social status or personality, she couldn't accept that kind of person. As for Zhang Xiaobao, she felt no problem. No matter where Zhang Xiaobao was, he must have a place. Only with this kind of person could there be common topics and ideals. Therefore, when Zhang Xiaobao said what was in his heart, Wang Wan gently leaned on Zhang Xiaobao and said, "So you asked me to accompany you to walk on the edge of social contradictions and outbreak. You still have the spirit of adventure in your bones. But now you've caused the contradictions, why don't you do something? What do I count as? Without the influence of other powers, facing the current situation, I am far too relaxed. Li Longji has been fooled by us, and the other ministers are just a piece of cake. However, Li Longji didn't lose out. We don't want his throne. We're content with being in charge of the currency, economic planning, and strategic deployment. In fact, they haven't encountered a more difficult time. Yes, first, I centralized production in agriculture and handicrafts. Then, I raised the working conditions of the workers and forced merchants to choose those with high grades when choosing workers. This caused a group of people to lose their jobs. The scariest thing about people losing their jobs isn't that they don't have money, but that they're used to the sudden change in their working environment. Most people are obedient and like to listen to other people's orders. After many years, they'll be at a loss if that person doesn't order them around anymore. My goal is to let them know in advance that they can make their own decisions. Even if others endlessly change, they can still make accurate judgments and live a good life. During this process, I didn't give up, nor did I use shock therapy. I didn't let the unemployed bear the losses of the change. I provided them with employment training institutions. They receive free training and benefits, just like in the United States. That's why that man kidnapped his own child. It's the same problem. His unemployment isn't absolute. It's relative. If he has a job, he doesn't want the low income. At the same time, He doesn't want to bear the pain and tiredness of training. Say, our social and educational benefits are the same as Germany's. Our employment is the same as America's. Our stability is something that Iceland desires, but can't achieve. Our military strength is something that neutral countries like Austria don't even dare to think about. And our care for our citizens is deeply rooted in Chinese Confucianism. Why do you have to push the blame to us when there's a problem? Based on what? Where did these rules come from? Zhang Xiaobao started slamming the table as he spoke. Wang Wan straightened her back and pushed Zhang Xiaobao with all her strength. She laughed and slammed the table with Zhang Xiaobao. When Zhang Xiaobao saw Wang Wan's expression, he paused and laughed as well. People are fucking insatiable. It's such a good era. Cherish it, fuck. Zhang Xiaobao muttered again. You're scolding me. Wang Wan was still laughing. No, I'm saying that after we occupy India and many other places to plant grass, we'll turn them into large pastures. We'll transport them to the riverside and seaside through their trains, and then transport them to the Tang Empire. We need to build big ships. It seems that the transportation cost is too high, but as long as the cost of raising is reduced, it can be equal to the domestic cost. It has to be equal, even if it's lower than the domestic cost. Otherwise, it will have a huge impact on the domestic animal husbandry industry. I plan to divert 70% of the people who have a real career and send them to the battlefield in the form of transportation. Zhang Xiaobao finally said his plan to deal with the turmoil caused by the 12 national policy articles. Wang Wan pondered for a moment before saying, by the time they arrive, the front lines will have already advanced, and they will be at the rear. You want them to contract other people's land and lower taxes, right? It's tax-free, and we'll also provide them with interest-free loans. We have so much money, and Li Longji has so much internal funds. After the agriculture and handicraft industry cluster, we can't possibly keep so much tax revenue in the bank. As long as the military can ensure the safety of their livestock and produce results within 3 years, flourish within 5 years, and 10 years, we don't even need 10 years. Once they have money, they will definitely attract the envy of other people in the country, and they will immediately follow suit. We'll rotate the troops there and continue to expand. This is called stable colonization. I won't foolishly send people to faraway places. When the time comes, we'll let them play the game of independence with the Tang Empire. Empire on which the sun never sets is a dream. Zhang Xiaobao's words were something that even the people of his era wouldn't be able to understand. They also didn't have the time to understand. They were all in different positions, and they were all busy with their lives and dignity. I feel that you care a lot about 5 years. Why is that? As an intellectual woman, Wang Wan knew how to cooperate. You're asking me? You're from a red family and you're asking me? Fine. I'll explain it to a big-breasted but brainless woman like you. Hubby, you think it's very big? I think I'm very brainless. Let's get down to business. 5 years is the minimum period for the technology to be converted from military to civilian use. 5 years is the average period for the establishment of an enterprise to achieve stable growth and development. 5 years is the adaptation period for the cultivation of crops to be popularized. 5 years is the regular period for the operation of capital to be doubled. 5 years is the inevitable period for the change in the content of educational materials. 5 years is the period from when I was born to when I ate my first bowl of cold jelly. 5 years is the period when I held you in my arms and hoped that you would still be happy after countless 5 years. As Zhang Xiaobao spoke, he reached out and hugged Wang Wan's waist. You're really the biggest liar in the world. I won't be fooled. Wang Wan leaned her head on Zhang Xiaobao's shoulder again. She remembered what happened at the beginning. Zhang Xiaobao wanted to treat her to cold jelly, but someone threatened the child. In the end, she didn't get to eat the cold jelly. At that moment, she knew that Zhang Xiaobao wasn't with the other party. After coming over, she asked Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao's regret was why he couldn't eat the cold jelly again. Well, she and Xiaobao were both crazy. What they thought before they died was different from others. It definitely couldn't be explained by the word free and easy. You found out. I'm really a liar. I'll deceive the whole world to bless and cheer for you. If anyone dares to oppose, I'll deceive them to death. Zhang Xiaobao put his other hand around Wang Wan's waist and carried her to the bedroom. What are you doing in broad daylight? Don't worry. I won't do anything else. No, I don't trust you. Wang Wan suddenly stopped. She remembered that she seemed to have said this to Zhang Xiaobao before. She said, No, I don't trust you. My mission is to bring you back. Damn the 5-year rule. It actually reminded her of the past. I know. Your mission is to bring me back. Then why don't you carry me? Zhang Xiaobao's EQ, IQ, and psychological foundation exploded at this moment. In fact, when he was talking about the 5-year rule, he had already thought of the past at the last moment. He just didn't expect Wang Wan to be so cooperative. Fortunately, I came with you. Otherwise, you would have ruined many girls. Wang Wan sighed in her heart. You've investigated me. What women do you think I had in the past? Who knows? Just like you said, the 160 billion data we got from the investigation is inaccurate. There are always loopholes. Then I'll whisper to you in private now. No one can hear. No, how can you be like this? Liar and hooligan. Aya. Hubby, tell me, when will you release the remedial measures? I'm planning to. Since you're scheming against me, we'll talk about it in the future. Wait, Xiaobao, let me tell you. Who would have thought that the wind and rain of that year would be sad and lonely? Since ancient times, it's difficult for ambitious and ruthless people to stay for long. I've never been a hero, but I've always been quiet at night. The unfinished business of winter and summer in my previous life. I'll share it with you tonight. It's enough to have you in this life. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.